and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right. May we have the roll call, Regina?
Vice Mayor Acuna?
Here.
Councilmember Borelli?
Here.
Councilmember Clarici?
Here.
Mayor Thomas?
Here.
Councilmember Wilkins?
Here. Thank you. With that, we're on item 3, announcements to the public, brief comments by the Placerville City Council. And I will start to my left. Councilmember Wilkins?
Nope. No, thank you.
Councilmember Clarici?
I'm good for now.
All right. Actually, I will go. First of all, I wanted to thank the city and El Dorado Disposal for hosting another successful community cleanup day. That is such a fabulous service that we give our community, and I understand that by 7:30 or even before that, cars were lined up down Mosquito. And Mr. Yule, can you give us any insight on how the day went?
I turned it over to Matt Lishman, who's in the audience this evening for this last go-around. But according to Matt, it was extremely successful again. We had not too long a lines, but a constant line throughout the day.
Great. Well, I heard it was a long line, but very fast, because you got them in, you got them out, and you got them dumped to their trash, and that's awesome. So our town is looking much cleaner, no doubt. Thank you so much.
Yeah, shout out should go out to Dan Harger Tree Service, and his crew. They're the ones that help offload all of the debris at the dump sites, and that really speeds things up. And they usually have a crew of anywhere from 10 to 12 people, and they really move it throughout the day. So
Did we get a lot
out to Dan Harger and his crew.
Did we get a lot of stuff for hospice or anything?
I think it was about the same as usual.
Okay.
Yeah,
great.
we usually get 3 to 4 yards.
That's wonderful. Well, it's a wonderful service. So thank you all that made that available to our community. Also want to let everyone know there's another update on the Western Placerville Interchange on the city's website, number 9. So that project is rolling along. If you want all the details, go to the city's website. Also, as I was coming into town this afternoon from Sacramento, you can tell where the city line is because you're coming down from Missouri Flat Road and then you see that gorgeous black pavement at the city line going through town. So many thanks to Caltrans for making Highway 50 through Placerville just really lovely. And thank you all for putting up with the night work. I know it's a little noisy for some of our residents, but it's sure going to be worth it because it looks really, really good.
They're doing it so quickly.
They
I
are.
mean, it's
And how long is that supposed to take? Are we another week or so on that?
It concludes, I believe, the 22nd of June.
22nd. Wow, they're doing a heck of a good job, and it sure looks nice.
And it's just the beginning of lots of asphalt being spread around Placerville.
Yes, which we will see in our city budget tonight.
There you go.
Some really fabulous road projects coming up thanks to your tax dollars at work inside our city limits. Love it. Speaking of asphalt, the crosswalk at near Main Street Melters looks fantastic. Appreciate the repair on that. And a big shout out to Sue Taylor and all the crowd for Hangtown Days. That was an amazing day. It was so much fun to see kind of the wagon train event reinvented, and it was a fabulous afternoon. The public came out, the wagon train looked good, downtown looked good, and really appreciate all the efforts to come and reinvent that important part of our history. It was a really fun day.
It was fun.
Yeah.
It was, and it was definitely the kids. It was a kid, you know, and they were so excited. And I just applaud what the wagon train did. Something that I think we've kind of been asking for a long time, and they did it this year. They, after they came through town, they stopped up in front of the Carey House, and they lined up. They just all stopped in the middle of the street, and they stayed there for about 15 or 20 minutes. So they gave everybody a chance to go up and talk to the, you know, ask the drivers about the horses, and the kids were all excited, and some of them got to pet the horses, and yeah, so it was. I liked the way they did it this year. It was really great.
It was really great. Anything else, Councilmember Braley?
No,
All right.
I've been yammering about that.
No, perfect. Vice Mayor Acuna.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Happy to see the chief here. I had obviously incorrect reports that he was on vacation. So I'll be glad to make this part of my report in public with his presence. Last week, in his absence, I had an excellent meeting with Commander Joe Wren and Sergeant John Muser, and they gave me a very comprehensive update not only on the budget issues that the police department might be facing at the time, but they also gave me a very comprehensive overview as to what the current issues are in town. We talked about all the various parks, we talked about Highway 50, we talked about downtown, keeping the community safe and making sure that we project the image that we want to have as a friendly town. Both Commander Wren and Sergeant Muser also gave me a very interesting update on transient-related issues, shared with me an amazing amount of camps that unfortunately are still in the hillsides around town. And I will be sharing with my colleagues maybe a little later on some of the impacts that we need to be aware of this summer. And I was very impressed with the efforts that the sergeant him and his fellow officers are making to deal with the transient-related issues. And these are people that want to live on our hillsides. That is their chosen path. And along that note, remind everybody that CAL FIRE declared yesterday the end of burning day. So if you see smoke, please call it in. We've certainly had a long and wonderful spring, so if you haven't cleaned your weeds, I don't know what you were waiting for, because now it's hot, and now it's also very dangerous. So remind everybody that the opportunity to do it that way is over for the season. No more burning. I also had an opportunity to be involved in what I thought was a very dynamic relaunch of what at one time was a very famous Twilight Balls on the 3rd floor of the parking garage. And Future Farmers of America, combined with Union Mine Boosters, held a fundraiser for Farm to Pork to raise money for a pig barn for Union Mine High School. And I believe there was over 200 people in attendance on the 3rd floor. And once the sun went down,
the hottest day of the year.
Everybody said, wow, why haven't we used this facility for fundraisers before? So I'm hoping that it was the first of many successful fundraisers. If someone would like to use the 3rd floor, please contact our city manager. He was very important part of making that all happen. It was a tremendously successful event. They raised a tremendous amount of money, and it was really great to do, the Future Farmers of America, and to see that organization doing so well with 4-H was really great. So, thank you. With that, we have a visitor in the audience from Goldbug Park. We have Charlie Basham, and he is here this evening to tell us about 2 upcoming events that are going to be happening at Goldbug Park, one this month and one next month. And Charlie, if I might, turn the mic over to him.
It is always a pleasure to welcome you, Charlie. What do you have for us tonight?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, Mark, for the introduction, and council members. We've been very busy in the park, and we're trying to draw more people in all the time. Last 2 weekends ago, we had, during Memorial Day weekend, we had priest mine tours, and we had 315 people in 6 hours.
Wow. Wow.
We never got a break, but it was great. And a lot of people from out of town. The last group actually was 30 people from France.
Oh my gosh.
And
that's great.
So we stayed open a little bit longer for them. Good. But I'm here to tell you about a couple of events, and I know you're aware of it, but I wanted to remind you, we're having a El Dorado County Chamber of Commerce mixer at Goldbug Park on June 28th. It's a Thursday, from 5:30 to 7:30, and I'd like to invite the council members to come. I know the city is a member of the chamber, and it's your event as well. It'll be an opportunity to introduce the park to local businessmen. What we're going to do in the future, I think, is develop some alliances, and perhaps some sponsorships and things like that for the park with the community and the business community in particular. And then on July 14th, Captain Ortega, I'd like you to know that there's going to be a murder at Goldbug Park.
Chief.
It's a rough town.
Just giving you July 14th. Yes. We planned this one out. It is our second murder mystery dinner. It was very successful last year, and so we're doing it again. 60 people came last year, and the price is the same, $45 per person. And that includes a dinner, which is catered by Smith Flat House, Old Town Grill. There will be raffles and libations and tours of the mine prior to, and then a wonderful murder and hopefully a good solution.
A wonderful murder.
And tickets are available through, you cannot get them at the park, but you can get them at Placerville News and also at the El Dorado County Chamber office on Main Street as well. So I'd like to invite anybody and everybody. We're also going to be seeking business people to get raffle items as well.
Great.
Anyways, and thank you very much for your support last year, Madam Mayor.
Oh, absolutely. That was such a fun event, and look forward, I know a lot of us participated this last year, and look forward to it again. And we just thank you for all the creative ways you keep our history alive and engaged in the community and to our visitors alike. You really are a tremendous asset in our town, and we're very grateful to all your dedicated efforts.
Oh, thank you very much. It is a pleasure to do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. All right. Great. Thank you so much. All right. And with that, Mr. Ewell, I'd like to turn it over to you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. For this item, I'm speaking on behalf of the Union Mine football program, namely head coach Chick Bist, who recently lost his 16-year-old daughter in a tragic car accident. He could not be with us tonight, but he wanted me to share with you that on Friday night, August 31st, Union Mine High School is announcing their Salute to Service home game against Douglas High School from Minden, Nevada. On this special night, all veterans and those who wear a badge will be allowed in free. Union Mine High School appreciates the service to our country by those who served in the military and recognize the freedom isn't free. Additionally, those who have committed to service to protect our communities are also appreciated for their commitment. We hope that this invitation to attend the Salute of Service game will be seen as an effort to draw our communities closer together and say thanks to those who serve. In the words of Coach Bist, those of you who know me know that my primary mission with Union Mine football is to encourage the development of stronger, more mature young men who recognize that they have so much more to accomplish in life. We began the process of changing the culture at Union Mine football last year, and I am committed to continue those efforts. That focus starts with recognizing the importance of good grades and, as a team, the reflection of strong citizenship within the community. To me, football is just icing on the cake. Our coaching staff and my best efforts will be centered on building the mindset that Union Mine High School is comprised of memorable students, athletes, not just great athletes. Thank you, and we hope to see you Friday night, August 31st, for the football game.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Steve. And I've had the occasion to meet with Coach Bist on a couple of occasions, and he is just so dedicated to the young men of our community. And in one of our lunches, he shared with me that I think this is important for us in Placerville to keep aware of. You know, we think of El Dorado High School, which is in the heart of Placerville, as our high school. And yet he said that the students at Union Mine view Placerville as their hometown. And I think it's really important that we recognize that as a community, embrace those young people in our community, not in a sense of rivalry, but as a sense of embracing them. And I just take my hat off to Coach Bist and everything he's doing to mentor these young men, to give them a sense of belonging and purpose, and look forward to embracing the Union Mine students more fully in our community. And
the party on the roof was
exactly,
for Union
exactly,
Mine,
and that
so
was exactly, and that was a great kickoff.
Exactly.
Well said, and our hearts just go out to the Bist family, and to you, Steve. So I know Hope was a relation of yours as well. And,
Thank you.
Our heart breaks for the family and the tragic loss. So. All right. Item 3.2, presentation and receipt of softball grant for improvements to Lions Park. Mr. Ewell.
Madam Mayor, if you don't mind, I'm going to pass this one off to Recreation Superintendent Matt Lishman, who's in the audience tonight.
Always a pleasure to have you here, Matt.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, members of the council. It's always exciting to be up here in front of you, too, when we're receiving grant funding money. So
what's not to like about that?
It's always a great time to be here.
Anytime, Matt.
So at this time, I'd like to invite Greater Sacramento Softball Association Commissioner Jeff Dubchansky to the podium. Jeff is in attendance tonight to present a check in the amount of $1,396. This grant funding is made possible through the efforts of Monique Plubel, who's our recreation supervisor in charge of adult softball, and the USA Softball Association. These funds are going to be used to install polycap tubing, which is like a yellow tubing that's going to go across the top of the outfield fence to improve the the look of the park, and also to help with fewer injuries and for those that are, you know, those guys that like to dive over the fence, you know.
Makes sense.
They're not going to get caught on the fence.
We're always keeping.
So this tubing will be a great improvement to the park and greatly appreciated by our current 61 teams that the city's softball league has in the league right now. So at this time, I'd like to turn it over to Jeff. Thank you, Jeff.
Well, Jeff, welcome. My goodness, thank you so much.
Good evening, council members. Thanks for having me here tonight. This is one of the fun things that I get to do as commissioner for the Greater Sacramento Softball Association and USA Softball. Just a little bit about our organization. We represent about 10,000 youth players and about 17,000 adult players in the Sacramento region. And our association stretches all the way from Dixon on the west to Lake Tahoe on the east, and north and south we go from Lincoln on the north to Lodi now on the south. So it seems like a big area, but across the country, we're one of 68 associations across the country that represent softball under the USA banner. So we do this grant program. Since I've been the commissioner, this is my 21st year as a volunteer with the association. I used to work for the city of Roseville in the Parks and Rec business, so I know everybody. Because I became the commissioner in 1998, we've been able to institute this grant program, which helps public agencies provide some small but needed improvements to their ballparks. And so I feel, and our group feels, that giving it to the public agencies, we know where the money's going, we know it's going to help improve the facilities, and we know it's going to make for better softball throughout our area. So with that, I keep my comments short. I just want to present you with this check tonight for what Matt said, but I included the pennies in the grant. So, you know, that's what Monique applied for. So I actually wrote the check out for whatever it was, 1395 and some change. So, yeah, I brought the big check for the photo opportunity.
Great, well,
but I'll give the real check to Matt.
All right, well,
so that's
let's
because
come on down and
he
do
probably
it.
can't catch. He probably can't catch the big one. Cash the big one.
All right. Softball is such an important part of our community's recreation, and so thank you again for making that possible, and Monique for going after those grant funds. We greatly appreciate it. And thank you, Matt.
They're headed out to the park for pizza.
Love that.
That sounds good.
All right. Closed session report. City Attorney Driscoll.
Thank you, Mayor Thomas. Tonight in closed session, the council unanimously approved, with all council members present, a settlement of the Byron Hughes claim in the amount of $3,626.
All right. Thank you so much. Adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes in the council?
I'll move the agenda.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Ceremonial manners, these are always wonderful. And tonight we have especially good news because we are introducing a new police officer and a new executive assistant to the chief of police. So Chief Ortega, this is an exciting night.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'm going to start off with introduction of our newest police officer, who's Amber Robinson. If she'd come up, please. So a little bit about Officer Robinson. When I first joined the police department a year ago, I would talk to Amber, like I did many of the employees, and find out, what do you want to do, where do you want to go? And Amber said she wanted to be a police officer, and she wanted to be a police officer for the city of Placerville. So through some good finagling of our budget, management of our budget, and some grant money, we were able to fund her attendance to the police academy. She attended the Sacramento Sheriff's Academy, and she graduated last Tuesday evening. So she's been a police officer not quite a week, well, I guess a week, and started her field training the very next night. So we're happy to have her. She worked as a dispatcher for almost 4 years, has completed almost enough units for her AA degree, and I'm going to encourage her to finish her bachelor's degree. She doesn't know that yet, but she's going to get some encouragement. And her husband, Robert, is a deputy sheriff for the Sacramento Sheriff's Department. So it's a law enforcement family.
Love it.
And we're very happy to have her with our police department. So welcome aboard, Amber.
Thank you,
So I
sir.
think, Regina, are you going to administer the oath of office?
Right.
So, wonderful.
Right hand and repeat after me. I state your name. I, Amber Robinson, do solemnly affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the state of California, and the Constitution of the state of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the state of California, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and that I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I am about to enter. Congratulations. Thank you.
Welcome aboard. Delighted you're here. It is such a privilege to welcome a new officer to our force, and especially when that person's goal is to serve the city of Placerville. And I think that's one of the things that makes our department so outstanding, is their dedication to our community. And Officer Robinson, we're just delighted that you're here. I am so sorry that I was unable to attend your graduation. I was scheduled to attend, and then I had an unfortunate delay, but I understand that our city manager was there to welcome you at your graduation, and delighted. So we are just all behind you, and thank you for being here and serving our city. Delighted. All right, and you have a new executive assistant.
One more. So my previous executive assistant to the, not just me, it's to the, also to the other command staff in the police department, resigned for a different job. So we did a job search and put an employment announcement out, and we came up with Michelle Rand. And Michelle, if you'd come up, please. And Michelle rose to the top of the interview pool that was done. She comes to us after having multiple executive type positions, and including working in a law office, a chiropractic office, as well as others. She's married to Lee, her husband, and she has 2 children. Oliver, 4 years old, and Thea, 2 years old. I think they're back there somewhere. And they probably want nothing to do with this. And Michelle also has her bachelor's degree in business management from CSU Stanislaus. So we're very happy to have her here, and welcome her to the police department.
Wow.
Welcome.
Michelle, we are just delighted because of executive support staff to our command and our public administration of our police department is just so vital, and to our entire department, because what they do is to protect and serve our community, and you're on the front lines of that as well. And so we thank you so much for your dedication in providing them the support they need to serve our community, and welcome aboard to our police department. We're just delighted you're here. So. Wonderful.
Congratulations.
Welcome. Look forward to seeing you.
It's always nice to see the officers on duty quietly slip into the back of their room so they can partake in the participation in watching a fellow officer get sworn in or get a promotion or move in. So it's always nice to see the blue in the back.
It is, as well as the families, because I know,
Absolutely.
especially when people have high-stress jobs, the family support at home is so vitally important. So thank you to the spouses and the families that are here tonight. We acknowledge your support as well, and are grateful for it. So. And then the last ceremonial matter is, it is Fair Week. Can you believe the fair is upon us? And so it starts this Thursday. I'm not going to read the whole proclamation, but I was very interested the fact that this year, of course, we're honoring our agricultural industry. And I found this fascinating, that the annual crop production in El Dorado County is almost $59 million. I was blown away by that, sum, with apples being the leading crop at 16.8 million, livestock at 10.9 million, and wine grapes coming in fourth with 8 million. And the theme this year is there's magic in the air. So hopefully it'll cool down toward the weekend and everyone will go enjoy the county fair. We're now on public comment, but first, do we have any written communication to acknowledge?
Mayor and Council, you did receive one item related to an action item you had on your May 22nd agenda from Sue Taylor, and I recommend just receive and file that communication.
All right, thank you so much. All right, this portion of the public meeting is now yours, and you're welcome to come to the podium, and anything that you'd like to talk about that is not on our agenda, we just ask that you follow the simple rule of the golden rule and don't say anything that you wouldn't want said about you. And speakers are limited to 3 minutes. So at this point, if anyone would like to address the council, the podium is yours. Good evening.
Good evening, Sue Vandelinder. So I just wanted to make a comment actually on something that you said. And that is the Farm to Pork. It was an excellent event, very well attended, and it made a huge difference that the city was willing to donate that space to allow us to have that space on the third floor. So it was just an amazing event. We really appreciate the support of the city, and we couldn't have done it without you. That class, the leadership class, could not have done it without you, so I just wanted to give you my personal thanks.
And you're president of the Chamber Board this year, aren't you, Sue?
I am.
Yes, well, yes. You did a heck of a good job. It was an amazing event, and thank you so much.
Thank you.
There's still time to book it for the rest of the year. Cleve's available.
Okay, well, I know, poor Cleve. I just keep, saying,
Sue,
oh, Cleve, that's such a great space.
Sue, would you just give a real brief explanation about the class that you're talking about? Because a lot of folks aren't aware, and I think it's a great idea.
Absolutely, Patty. So this is the leadership class of El Dorado, the El Dorado Chamber of Commerce. And anyone can attend that leadership class, they just need to apply. But it's a wonderful way to learn about local government. It's a wonderful way to learn about our agriculture and our county as a whole. I think it's very encompassing. And every year, that leadership class does something for the community where they band together and they raise money for some phenomenal charity. And this year it happened to be Union Mine and building the hog area for Union Mine. And I think the last tally that I heard at the Chamber Board was over $40,000.
Oh, my word.
So it was an amazing event, and one that I hope will reoccur and maybe be used for other nonprofits, but it was really a wonderful event, and I really appreciate the support of the city.
Thank you, Sue.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. Anyone else like to speak?
Good evening, Mayor and council members. I noticed that item number 2 related to a possible lease of the old City Hall buildings, and it's not reported out, so I'm still interested in finding out what happened, because this was property that was subject to lots of discussions related to the repurposing committee, the Blue Ribbon Committee, that was going to find a use for the courthouse and even talk about the space related next door to what us old timers remember as the post office building. And then next to that, the old telephone company. I remember that Council Member Borelli, with great passion, talked about the need to save those two buildings. So I was shocked last month to go to a Board of Supervisors meeting and find out they had that on the agenda where they're going to declare it to be surplus. And then I naturally said, well, gee, don't you think you ought to talk to the folks in the city? And they said, we have. And that surprised me, because it's supposed to have been part of the Blue Ribbon Committee repurposing. So I thought maybe you could fill us in and tell us what that's about. And shouldn't that be in the name of openness and government and transparency, the subject that you talk about, where it has to do with the repurposing of those 4 buildings?
Some people suspected, and I know it's a long notion, not just the George Algers of the world, but the thought that when you look at the litigation, it seems like the Blue Ribbon Commission only had work done when there was a need to go to court and say, oh, well, we're not going to have a problem with impact on the city because we've got a repurposing committee, and that's what they're going to be looking at. And then all of a sudden, once the litigation's over, they stopped. And then we start finding out you've got item number 2 on the agenda, and then the Board of Supervisors was declaring the building down the street as surplus. So what's going to be the case for having these buildings made a subject of public discussion and get public input as to what would be done about them? Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? So, yes.
Madam
Mayor, answer that now?
If I might.
Sure, you bet.
And I apologize to Mr. Smith. I should have reported that the council did not take reportable action on any of the closed session items other than the liability claim. And the item that Mr. Smith is referring to as a conference regarding real property negotiations is something that is normally and customarily and legally held in closed session while those negotiations are going on. Once the negotiations are completed, there will be a report of what those negotiations
are. Okay, great. Thank you for clarifying that. Appreciate it. Anyone else like to speak? All right. With that, we'll close public comment. Thank you so much. Turn my own mic off. With that, we are on the consent calendar. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered routine and will be enacted by one motion roll call unless a member of the council wishes to remove an item. Any council member wishes to do so on this extensive agenda?
Almost
all right.
Impossible to do.
I'll move consent.
I'll second that movement.
Does any member of the public wish to comment on an item on our consent agenda? All right, seeing none, a roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Acuna?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Mayor Thomas?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilkins? Aye.
All right. And with that, we are on item 11.1, adopt a resolution of the City Council of the City of Placerville adopting rates for the collection of solid waste within the City of Placerville franchise area, which is something we do every year, I believe. Mr. Morris.
Yeah, just quickly, I will introduce Jeff England from El Dorado Disposal, who will give us a kind of a report of the last year, 2017, what went on and their programs, and then we'll go from there. So, Jeff.
Jeff and Sue, it's always a pleasure to have you here. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you very much. Thank you, Cleve, Madam Mayor and Council. Appreciate the opportunity to present again this year. Thank you very much. We do have a PowerPoint up on the screen that we'll work through here. I'd like to speak to oh, that's right, this is me now. Okay, there we go. 3 areas of service that we wanted to highlight. Our residential trash recycle service, commercial, and our community involvement that we'd like to speak to this evening. In the city of Placerville, we have 2,930 customers, and you can see the robust job that they're doing with recycle and green waste because we have over 9,000 carts distributed throughout the city of Placerville that we provide service for. One of the community services that we're very happy to provide that we get to do twice a year and did just recently is our community cleanups. And I'm happy to report that in 2017 at our spring cleanup over 35 tons, at a fall cleanup over 41 tons, and just this last weekend over 45 tons of material were removed from Placerville homes, yards, and garages at no cost. And very nice teamwork once again with the city staff on that as well. It's a very nice collaborative project that we get to do twice a year. I'd like to speak first regarding our commercial services, identify a couple of related items there as they relate to state of California mandates. AB 341, as many of you know, we've been speaking about it for many years, is essentially the state mandate that commercial entities have a recycle program. I'm happy to report that in the city of Placerville, of the 127 businesses which fall under the mandate, which is whether they generate 4 yards of trash on a weekly basis, only 3 are left to comply. Those are multifamilies, which have very difficult situations there, space-wise, parking-wise, things of that nature. Typically, we do seek creative solutions to get those folks in line too, so that we're at 100%. But I do want to tip my hat to the commercial folks in Placerville for such an excellent compliance there. A new one that's come up the last couple of years is Assembly Bill 1826. Which speaks to mandatory organics recycling. And principally, this involves food waste. And I want to give a shout out to restaurants in the Main Street area. One of the interesting parameters for compliance is if you share a commercial bin enclosure, you will fall into regulatory compliance for having to have a food waste program. And so this is kind of a surprise for a lot of smaller restaurants who wouldn't think that they'd have to fall in. But nice teamwork with our sustainability coordinator there. And I'd like to congratulate and thank Powell's, Thai Noodle, Public House, Centro, and Pizza Benet for stepping up. Segregating food with all the activity that goes on in the tight space of a backroom restaurant isn't the easiest thing to do, and these folks are stepping up, and they're to be commended. I'd also like to add that these programs are contributing mightily to a very nice 3% increase in our diversion rate from 2016 to 2017, specific to the city of Placerville. As you know, that's really the driving number that's reported to Cal Recycle every year. We work very closely with Cleve and Pierre to ensure that Cal Recycle is happy with our programs and the level of compliance that the city is doing, and we have an excellent working relationship with Cal Recycle there. So I'm happy to report that as well. Well, community service, that was the third thing that I wanted to speak to, and I know I can't read those from here. But I did want to just highlight some of the folks that we really have the great privilege to be able to help in and around the city of Placerville and throughout El Dorado County. Boys and Girls Club, MORE, Big Brothers Big Sisters, Mother Teresa Maternity Program, CASA are just a few of these programs. When you look at that, you see we've got a soft spot for kids clearly there. We also really enjoy one we've been doing for a couple of years now, which is the Placerville Rise and Shine Community Cleanup. We get to teamwork with the city staff again, getting parks and ball fields and stuff ready for spring. That's a real nice one that we've been getting to do recently as well. Oh, I also wanted to add that we've got, I'm sure many of you have seen the truck that we have, which has the wrap on it around city of Placerville. It's got a really cool Main Street picture on it, and we're able to advertise events on the back of it. I just had a really nice conversation with Bethany with the City Police Department about advertising National Night Out in August on the back of our truck. And so we look forward to not only getting that out there, but helping with that really impactful event as well. Well, our contract with the City of Placerville speaks to 5 performance measures that we're rated on every year. And so I'd like to reference those performance measures and speak to how well we did this year. The first is what we call the missed pickup rate. And if anyone's ever had, the joy of looking out their window and seeing our garbage truck drive right past their cart out there, they call in and say, hey, you missed my garbage can. Well, that is a statistical entity that's important to us, and it's so important that it's one of the performance measures that we're rated on. With 2,930 customers serviced every week during the year, that creates 152,360 service opportunities just for the trash. We don't count the recycle and the green waste on that one. We had 103 misses this last year. And so the short of it is that puts us well within the requirement for meeting that performance standards. But darned if we aren't going to work on those 103 and see how we miss those. All right, the other has to do with the call answer rate. And I want to thank the council because you worked with us this last year to make a change in that rate. We are now at a 3-minute average wait time specific to when somebody calls in and that expectation. And I want to thank you for that because what you really did was recognize that the priority should be an excellent customer service experience. And that really enables us the opportunity to answer all questions thoroughly and be complete in our conversation. And it also speaks to the fact that we've added many new programs, and with all these state laws and other changes, we get more and more calls all the time where people have more and more questions. And we'd rather not feel like we need to be in a hurry to get through those calls. And so you're working with us on that really helps us provide a better customer service experience there. I will tell you that our local customer service call center, which is very important to us, that we've got local folks answering calls throughout the county. On a really busy day during the season, we'll take about 800 phone calls a day, which is onerous as it sounds, I must say. But we've got great ladies who work in the customer service department, and we've done some specific things I'll speak to in a bit to help us out there. Other performance measures, customer complaints. So these are complaints we get. Obviously, if you're getting 800 calls a day, then you've got a fair number of folks that are saying what the heck or this or that or other things. We specifically reference complaints that we haven't been able to resolve satisfactorily out there, which we work very hard to do. Of the number of complaints that we got, we have 5 that fell into that category, which puts us within our expectations that you hope folks have for us to meet our performance standards. We also have litter complaints parameter, and that 0 up there doesn't mean that we haven't had folks call and say, hey, you left some debris on our street. What it means is really 2 things. One is we have an expectation that if we dump material on the street in the process of providing service, that our driver will get out of the truck and clean it up. It's really that simple. And that's the expectation that we have. And when folks call and say, hey, we had this happen out there and I've got stuff scattered up and down my street or on my lawn, we take that very seriously. The other thing that we'll do, if necessary, is I should have introduced earlier, actually, Sue Vanderlinder, our Division Vice President, Rick Vall, who runs our transfer station, and I'm happy to introduce Kenny Smith, who's our Operations Supervisor, who is the point person for City of Placerville. And if you see Kenny Smith out in his pickup truck with a broom and a dustpan, it's because somebody called and said, hey, somebody messed up my street there, and it could be me, it could be him, frankly, it could be Sue out there making sure that we get that mess cleaned up. And that's what that category speaks to specifically, and that's how we attain a 0 on that one. The last of our performance standards has to do with reporting. The diversion numbers, because they are ultimately reported to Cal Recycle, are an expectation that we're timely and accurate with those reports. And I'm happy to, as well as our franchise fee payments, that's another requirement that we have, and I'm happy to report that we met that expation as well this year.
Jeff, can you explain diversion?
Happy to. Yeah,
what does that mean?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, and anytime I kind of speak the lingo and you want me to clarify, I'm very happy to. Thanks for asking, Wendy. Diversion is the state. Let me start with the state of California has a mandate that eventually, and this has been kind of a moving target, that 75% of all material that is essentially thrown out is diverted or recycled in some form or fashion, which is a lofty goal, but that's what we're all shooting for here. So diversion essentially is a percentage, it's a ratio of all the stuff that we pick out and how much of that green waste or recycle was actually shipped off to be sorted and recycled, or if it's green waste, sent off to a composting facility that we work with in Sacramento. So it's a rather simple, arithmetic process, but it's a pretty darn complex set of goals to meet when you throw in the assembly bills and everything that goes into it there. But that's fundamentally what it is. Did that explain it
Perfect,
adequately?
thank you.
Okay, thank you. So our rate adjustment every year. So City of Placerville, our rate adjustments each year pertain to two variables. One is the consumer price index, and the other is a fuel surcharge, which both speak directly to inflation for the prior year. In this year, with inflation being what it has been for the last year, the rate adjustment is at a 4.21%. We also thought it would be helpful to present the last 5 years so that you could see the trend. Over the last 5 years, the rate adjustment has actually averaged, including this year, a 1.59%. You'll note that because Placerville has a fuel component in the process, that they actually went backwards. We actually, in 2015, went backwards by 0.46%. And as you can see in those prior years, inflation being what it was, they were much lower. And as I said, they actually went backwards that year. So this year at a 4.21%, what that translates to, if you've got a 35-gallon cart, 84 cents a month on the increase there. We do ask that the council allow what we've been able to do for several years now, which is hold the senior rate flat, specific to the 35-gallon cart, the smallest size cart. And so that rate would hold at $16.24 per month. The others, you can see the difference there. On the 96-gallon, the largest cart, the increase on a monthly basis is $1.58. So those are the numbers specific to the rate adjustment for this year. We thought we'd throw one fun little factoid in there. This year, a couple years ago, we introduced a search engine into our website called Recollect. And so we thought we'd, we could play Family Feud with it. We thought we'd share the top 4 items searched by folks who perused our search engine. And it is all about, can you recycle motor oil, furniture, mattresses, and paint? I'm happy to report that the answer is yes on all of those things. We actually have a mattress program now at the transfer station that you can bring mattresses into. Some of you folks, good folks, know that we've also had a motor oil curbside pickup program, and through our bulky program, we're also able to pick up furniture as well as household paints and other materials as well. So that's what folks are interested in when they're searching our search engine. All right, so what do we do to make things better in 2017? A big focus, as I alluded to earlier, was on the customer service experience. One of the things that we did to enhance that, and frankly it's both a safety as well as a service enhancement, is that we invested in and put tablets into all of our trucks. Our drivers are no longer driving around with a big thick sheet of papers to identify where they've been and what they've done and everything that's going on out there. And we find that tablets provide excellent real-time information, and we're able to communicate back and forth with the drivers. If something happens out there, somebody calls and says, hey, you missed me, we're able to notify the driver right away and in a much better position to respond more quickly to that. And I also believe that it's a safer situation for our drivers and less distracting rather than having to go through paperwork and sort through all that stuff. So that's something that we introduced this last year. Speaking back to the call center, we hired 4 more customer service reps to handle the number of calls. Again, I want to thank you for working with us on the expectation on time, but what we did to our share, fair share there, was to hire 4 more customer service representatives, and we also invested in a new phone system called Spectrum this last year. And this last year we added a one-click payment process to make that easier for folks who want to pay online as well. All right. Well, 2018, what are we going to do? Well, what I think is going to be fun and exciting for this next year really gets back to recycling and trying to reach those diversion goals, and how do we do that? One of the things that you've probably heard about in the news is the challenges that we are facing with recycled material and finding a home for it. For many, many years, we've been able to very easily to send virtually everything under the sun that could be recycled to China. And there are some challenges associated with that as they've reduced the infrastructure building and such that they're doing, and are scrutinizing much more carefully the material that goes to them. And so it's not, the short of it is, many of us are having to look for alternative places to send recycle. And it's made it more difficult, much more of a challenge to do. But what it really means is it increases the need for us to educate the customers as to what recycled materials are and what we can really recycle, because one of the things that we've got to do is drive contamination out of the recycle. Eliminate the temptation for folks to want to throw, trash in there, which does happen in places, but also to better educate folks that they're not trying to do the right thing and putting something in there that in effect becomes a contaminant. And so this is where our ability to utilize our sustainability coordinator, do effective public outreach and education is critical, and this is definitely a target for us in the coming year. One of the other things that we'd like to do is increase the number of vouchers, free vouchers that we pick up for bulky items for multifamilies. This is something that is a burden that the city carries as well as the county. If somebody moves out and they leave mattresses and couches and such in the parking lot or sitting in the enclosure, somebody's got to pick it up. And so what we've done is try to mitigate that by giving free vouchers to the managers at multifamilies and having them call us when they've got that type of a situation come along. And then the other is, again, commercial recycling and organics, which is going to be a really big driver going forward. The state has very high expectations, and they don't necessarily care how difficult it is, whether you've got a place easy and available to take it to, or whether there's a great end market to take it. In short, they'll set the expectation before the infrastructure and some of those other things are in place. It's just the way the state does things, but it's our mission to make it work. And so that's why, again, especially with restaurants and on the organic front, we are looking at creative solutions to help folks do that. That's why I really wanted to give the shout out to the restaurants on Main Street who are stepping up right now, because that's going to be a very big deal as we move forward, keeping Cal Recycle happy. With that, I get to say thank you, and happy to take any questions that anyone might have.
Well, thank you so much, Jeff, and the great work you do. Those numbers are pretty doggone impressive on your customer service levels. So we thank you for your excellent care of our customers and also of our community and all the ways that you are very involved and committed to making our community a better place. Any council member comments or questions?
I have a question.
Yes,
you're talking about the restaurants on Main Street. So I'm wondering, what about all the other restaurants? Is there something that you guys are maybe like Placerville Drive or Broadway?
Sure. Or yeah, I thought it would be interesting to point out the folks on Main Street, and especially because of that shared enclosure situation that makes them obligated to be participatory in the program. We have we hired a specific position a few years ago, the sustainability coordinator that I've referenced a couple of times. That person's mission is to do the outreach and education that I'm talking about. It's to literally dumpster dive and identify if folks fall within the state mandate parameters, and then get out there and meet with managers and other key people to find creative ways to implement those programs. Ken Smith, for example, will go out with the sustainability coordinator and take a look at an apartment complex as an example, or the back room of a restaurant. And we try to offer solutions so that everybody is meeting the state mandates and that we're getting everyone into the fold. So that's really, for us, that sustainability coordinator position is our point person for leading that, and really the driver for us, Patty, to try to make the state happy.
Well, so do you have containers? I have a couple of restaurants at my building, and I was wondering, because I haven't seen anything extra that's
Sure.
out there other than their dumpsters. And
What we'll do a lot of the times, what we've had to do, so what we've done is we've bought carts that are different. They're the smaller size, 35-gallon carts, because frankly, that's about the only thing that'll fit in a restaurant kitchen. And a lot of them have to tuck them under their boards. And what we really are looking for, because clean material is very important. And so we're not really looking for scraps off the plate, but prep. Food primarily is what we're after there. And frankly, that's realistic relative to what the prep guys and the people in the back room are able to do and segregate. So that's really our target. Again, it's important to avoid the contaminants that get in there, because ultimately this stuff is going to be made into compost. We have found a partner in Napa, and this is where we're hauling material now too. We had a real struggle. We had our hopes very much with a company in Sacramento called Clean Roll Technologies, and they were making compressed natural gas with the food waste that we were taking down there, because we've been doing this for a couple of years now.
I read about that.
Yeah, well, let's just say they had some technical failures. And they are not a viable option for us any longer. So we did an extensive search and talked to a lot of folks, and we are now hauling our restaurant material to Napa, which isn't, you know, the nicest, easiest thing to do operationally, but it was our best choice there. And so what we're doing right now is taking the food waste that we collect, and Rick Vall at the transfer station, his folks commingle it with green waste, make this really soup out of it, and then we haul it down to Napa where it's composted at a facility down there.
That's interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for asking.
Councilmember Clarici.
I have two questions, actually. One is on the rate adjustment numbers. How much of it is the CPI and how much it is the fuel charge? Because
you know what, John? I don't have that immediately in front of me, but thank you. Cleve does.
Cleve has it.
Yeah, on your staff report, you see the CPI increase is 2.94%, and the fuel adjustment is 1.27%. And you have the documentation behind attached to the.
I didn't read that.
No worries, no worries.
No, I should have read it.
Any other council questions or comments? All right. Does any member of the public have any comments?
I'm sorry. Hold on.
Okay, yes, go ahead, John.
I said two.
Oh, pardon.
The second one is on when your outreach to the restaurants and whatnot, do we ever, we have FOG, fats, oils, and grease that we work with. Is there an opportunity to maybe get our message out about FOG at the same time we're talking about composting? That doesn't need to be answered right this minute, but I was just, as soon as I thought, oh, you're going into restaurants to talk about the composting, the green waste and all that, I'm thinking, we have a message to send about fats, oils, and grease going into the sewer system, because it can be a big problem in our sewer lines.
It is a big problem.
Yeah. So anyway, that's just
a good
thought.
idea, John.
Just a thought.
And vice versa, we could perhaps
That's
carry
true.
their
We
message
could, that's
as
true.
our crews go
could
out.
Be,
talk about FOG.
You raise an excellent point, John, and I appreciate it. It is something that's on our radar. We meet each month with Cleveland Pierre, and that is a subject that has come up from time to time. We're not there's another company, Sacramento Rendering, that typically provides a service that picks up those fats and greases there. But to your point, which speaks to outreach and communication, anytime, frankly, you're having a face-to-face with the key players in a restaurant or business entity, that opportunity is there. And I do think that that's some messaging that we could teamwork to help the city alleviate that issue, because we know that that's a real challenge and something that you definitely want to keep off the state's radar as well.
All right, thank you so much.
Sure.
Does any member of the public wish to say anything about this agenda item? Come on over.
Of course. Just a couple questions. The first one has to do with notice. Mayor, a couple weeks ago, I got a message on my answer machine from Waste Management that discussed this meeting tonight, said there was a written notice that had a different date on it. When I called back, the explanation was that there was a written notice sent. I don't remember receiving it. And I don't know why they would, if you had to go around and talk to everyone who gets service personally, that'd be a lot of phone calls. So the first question has to do with who keeps track of the notices that are given. Is it something the city does, Waste Management does? Who keeps track of the notices and how they're made? The second one has to do with the CPI. Why do you use the CPI? A lot of economists say they prefer the GPN deflator because it's more reliable than a bag of groceries. A bag of groceries is not necessarily what equals a pail of garbage. And there are a lot of factors that go into determining rates and costs, such as the number of customers that are served throughout the last year. Has it gone up? Because the number of stops you make may reduce the per capita or per customer price. Fuel charges, you can understand. Is this what other communities do for rates? Is it always done on the CPI? What other factors go into it in other communities is the second round of questions. And the third one has to do with, right now we have 3 properties that are vacant for various reasons. One of them is for restoration. So we did use Waste Management's, one of those large containers, the really big trucks bring it in, and a great job of delivery and pickup. But they're not occupied. So I asked the service representative, and it might have been a day when there's more than 800 calls that day, but the answer was, well, you got to pay it because that's the ordinance. But shouldn't there be a way to suspend it if you're not using it for 3 to 9 months? But the answer was very strong, nope, that's the ordinance, you got to pay it, you use it. And it doesn't sound very efficient, because why would you want to make a stop when you're not going to get anything? There's no organic matter being accumulated. So those are the questions I had, but just again, curiosity on that second item, which is what goes into this rate-making process and how do you do it in other jurisdictions? And again, I thank Jeff for a really fine presentation. Thank you.
We'll get clarity on that. Thank you. Any other comments? Oh. Hi, Ben.
How we doing?
Hi, we're doing good. Welcome.
Awesome.
One of our Main Street restaurants.
So I'm going to be very brief, and I just kind of wanted a little illumination of basically the compost recycling project that's supposedly been going on. My El Dorado disposal rates went up 1,000%. So I pay 1,000% more than I was before their compost director came in and went through my trash and said, you know, it's like, okay, I'm on board. If California's ready to do this, if we as a city are ready to do this, that's great. He gave a shout out to some other restaurants. I'd like to know how they're basically placing this composite. There's not a green waste receptacle for us to throw our stuff in. It doesn't exist. You know, it's us, it's Farm Table. For anybody who doesn't know, I own Heyday. You know, Pokey, I think California Kitchen has their own waste disposal. But, you know, I mean, I have no problem paying these rates. I just want to know that I'm just not giving money to somebody for the same thing I was paying for. So, I mean, what I was paying $40 a month or $50 a month for, now I'm paying almost $400. It's like, okay, what am I paying for? You know, I mean, my staff we don't have any separate receptacles or anything like that. So, that's essentially why I'm here. So, if I could get some enlightenment about it from you guys, by all means, like, please lay it on me. But every time I've called El Dorado Disposal, it's basically the standard nomenclature is basically pound sand. This is the way it is.
Okay.
So I you know, I have a hard time writing a check every month for that.
Okay.
So please, if you can.
We'll get some clarity after public comment,
Yeah,
Ben.
for sure.
Yeah, we appreciate
All right,
that.
thank you.
Thank you so much. Would anyone else like to address this item? Oh, wait. Good evening.
Good evening, Sue Rodman, also a customer, and I've had very good service. I've had side yard service, and they have been very good about walking up and collecting my trash and walking the green waste bin back up and picking up the recycles and the regular garbage and carting them down the street because the trucks are too heavy for my driveway. And so that's the agreement we worked out, and they have never missed a time. And whenever I have seen the driver, he's always been very polite and nice. So I've had excellent service. I can't complain.
All right. Thank you so much. Anyone else? All right. Sue, do you want to come on up? And I hear you want to address Ben's comments and concerns.
Thank you. Yes, Sue Vandelinder. Well, and I would like to address, Ben, I'll come and meet with you. So I frequent Heyday probably every couple of weeks, anytime I'm in town, because I love it. What I would like to say is that actually Pierre and I and Taylor went to all of the restaurants on Main Street several months ago. And what we found was that actually for a number of years now, we had several restaurants who weren't actually paying for what they were disposing of. And instead of going back in time and saying, well, you've been generating this much waste, we said, let's just start from here and try and identify, you know, how much each restaurant is generating. And I'm not going to go into details about what happened there, but that was the purpose of the rate change. And I'm sorry if it wasn't made clear, Ben, and I will be happy to sit down with you. In terms of the food waste program, that's come at a later time, so the increase wasn't related to the food waste program per se. The city did a wonderful job extending the enclosure so we could put food waste containers in there and start to do the food waste program that we had initiated. So I will personally get with Ben.
Great.
And we will make sure that Ben has what he needs so that he can participate fully in the food waste project. And thank you for bringing it to our attention here tonight.
Great. Thank you for working with our business owners on their concerns. Really appreciate it. And then let's see, Cleve, I believe, can you answer Mr. Smith's comments about,
Sure.
Do you have to pay for trash if you're not on your property?
So let me go through a couple things. First, I want to just, I'm looking at Sue, so I want to make sure I'm correct on this. The food wasting container that we're talking about in the enclosure is only in the east end enclosure. So Ben, that you use the west end, I believe. So you wouldn't see that at the east end. So, but you can discuss that with Eldorado Disposal and get that worked out. So the question regarding the notices were actually sent out with their bill from Eldorado Disposal. There was a notice that was sent with that announcing the date of the public hearing. The call was done because due to an error that was done, we were not able to do it at our last meeting, so we did the calls. Through Eldorado Disposal did the calls. We appreciate that, notifying all the customers that it would be done at this meeting rather than the last meeting. So that's what will happen in relation to the notices. In terms of the CPI, I think it's fairly common. I'm looking at Jeff and Sue. They work in a lot more agencies, and the ones that I've seen that the CPI is a fairly common index that is used for these purposes. The CPI and the fuel component is spelled out in our contract, in our ordinance, that is how these adjustments will be considered. In terms of if you have vacant property, if that property is vacant for 30 days or more, you can actually come into the city and apply for an exclusion. We review those and then we forward those over to Eldorado Disposal. So if you have that case, Mr. Smith, come into the city, ask for the exclusion permit, you can fill that out and turn it in at our level, and we'll take care of that.
Great. Thank you so much. It's perfect. All right.
I have a question.
Okay, great. And then we'll bring it back to council for action here.
On the issue of notification, so I want to get this straight.
Because I got one in my trash bill. I don't know. I imagine everyone got one in their trash bill. This is for the city residents specifically, correct? So if you live in the city and you get trash collection, which is like 99% of the households in one form or another, you should have gotten a notice in both your bill and then a phone call. I didn't get a phone call, but I got it in the bill. I saw that.
Yeah. I believe they did either phone call or email if they did not have a phone call for some reason, so it was supposed to go to everyone. And then we announced it at our last city council meeting also, if anyone was there expecting to speak on it because of that date.
So if a city resident did not get notified, we'd really want to drive that to ground to make sure that that person gets the notifications if they're a city resident. So I just want to, thank you very much for that clarification.
All right. Do I have a motion on this item?
I'll move for the item.
The adoption of the resolution.
It's been moved and seconded. Roll call, please.
Vice Mayor Acuna?
Aye.
Councilmember Borelli?
Aye.
Councilmember Clarici?
Aye.
Mayor Thomas?
Aye.
Councilmember Wilkins?
Aye. Well, thank you, Waste Connections Management, for being here tonight and for that very thorough report. We greatly appreciate it. All right. Item 11.2. We are on the final part of our budget workshops. My goodness, we've had, it's been a very comprehensive budget season. We are nearing the end. Can I get a hallelujah from department heads, and Dave especially, huh?
Run.
All right, Dave, take it away.
All right, thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. First of all, this is a follow-up to your second budget workshop, as the mayor indicated.
Can you speak in the microphone? It's a little hard to hear you on that mic, Dave. Thank you. Give us the highlights on this.
Yeah, so you've had two budget meetings, budget workshops, and most of this information you've already seen, possibly twice. So we'll jump right into sales tax trends, which is your most significant local economic indicator. Represents 56% of your general fund. Just as a heads up, your per capita sales tax was $444 in 2017, which was up from $425. You did slip from number 38 to 37, however, but we do hope to be number one someday. So jumping right ahead, the contributors to your sales tax are shown here. I won't go into those. Looking at the growth of the fourth quarter, you can see that there was winners and losers, apparel stores, general merchandise, other retail, food stores, as well as all other outlets. County pool, state pool were down. All the other categories were up. Most importantly, auto sales and your building materials and farm implements. Vice Mayor Acuna asked for the top 20. In the past, we provided the top 10. We have the top 20 sales tax producers. We appreciate all of our businesses that choose Placerville as the place to run their business, but this is our top 20 for you to see here tonight.
I'd like to make one mention because one of those is a new person, a new entity on our list. I mean, some of these might be new as well, but C&H Motor Parts under the management of Marcos Gomez? Yeah. Yeah, the brothers Gomez, but Marcos that's kind of his thing. So a new business on town, revitalization, they crack into the top 20. Congratulations to them.
Congratulations to C&H Motors. All right, just looking at the growth historically, and then also I want to just touch base on the assumptions. So for next fiscal year, 18-19, we assume 5% growth as of the quarter ending September 30th, 3.5% in the fourth quarter of 2018, and 3.2 and 4.8 in the first and second quarter of 2019. We forecast $4.8 million, which represents 5.44% growth, very healthy. And then in 18-19, based on state forecast projections, 4.72%. And this is your historical sales tax as compared to adjusted inflation and cumulative. Jumping right ahead to your budget assumptions, we did build in the projected impacts, whether it's fuel, utilities, personnel. We did include negotiated salary benefits and commitments, as well as the mandated minimum wage increase in 2019, which is a 9% increase. One notable thing is your PERS, your pension contributions are going up to the general fund by $116,000. All funds, $205,000, and that's going to continue over the next 6 years. So general liability insurance, because of the sewer backup claims we've had in recent years. Yes.
Dave,
yeah.
would you go back and say that again, and so that the public can really understand about this PERS thing? We keep talking about it, and I'm not too sure that people really understand how much money that we are contributing to that.
Sure, that's a great question. So over the next 7 years, your pension contributions are going to go up annually, total in aggregate. So 7 years from now, we're going to pay $1.2 million more in pension contributions than we are today. And that's significant.
Yes, it is.
It's about a 10% increase in your overall budget. It's something that we're going to have to grapple with. This year, for example, we did have to cut into your budget, forego some things we really needed to do And it's going to get tighter and tighter over the next, the following 6 years, and we'll make it through it, but it's going to take some sacrifice, just so you know.
Right.
So great question. General liability insurance, because of your sewer backup claims we've had in recent years, it went up 31.17%, which across all funds, that was about $81,000. Let's see, let's talk about cost recovery, some good news. So staff went back, as you know, we're doing a lot of capital projects, CIP, capital improvement program projects, water, sewer, road projects, and in order to deliver those projects, staff went back and looked at how much time the administration department, the city manager, Steve Ewell, Rick Ferreira, your public works operations manager, as well as myself, spend on helping deliver CIP projects. And we identified an additional $69,000 that could be recovered. Now, it is based on an estimate, and we'll be monitoring this very closely, making sure our timesheets are notated correctly to each project. So we'll provide a kind of a true-up on that mid-year so you can see how we're progressing with that. Let's see, just one thing I want to mention, retiree medical insurance. We are paying pay-as-you-go, meaning we're paying the premiums today, but we're not setting anything aside. So in your budget, it assumes the premiums that we anticipate. Contingency, some more good news. The $75,000 contingency is being funded by net revenues. In the past 5 or 6 years, we've been using reserve money for that. So we built that into your budget, knowing that things are going to begin to get tighter. Capital outlay, real quick, your equipment budget. We have a number of needs, and we've really looked at it closely. However, we're going to need more time, as we indicated in our budget workshop. So Cleve and the rest of the department heads are going to look at that over the summertime and come back to you with a plan with funding recommendations and options for you to consider, just so you know. Debt's always fun, isn't it? So just as a reminder, our annual principal and interest for all funds is $2.9 million. General fund $176,000, which is primarily the City Hall lease and the equipment lease. City Hall, the TI improvements will be paid off in 2020, and the capital lease for equipment, the 5-year assets will be paid off in 2020, and the 10-year in 2025. And of course, the 900-pound gorilla is the sewer enterprise fund, the $2.7 million annually for the water reclamation facility improvements. Transfers, just real quick, your fund transfers, money coming in and out of your general fund. We do use fund accounting, not fund accounting. It is fun sometimes, though. Gas tax, actually, the transfer in for your road maintenance dropped based on the league's forecast for gas tax by $27,000. The general fund to general liability fund, which is basically premiums for your property and general liability insurance, increase. We talked about that large increase in general liability insurance primarily. So total 28% or $31,000. And the reserve, of course, we're funding out of net revenues, so we don't have a transfer from your reserve for economic uncertainties. Alternative service levels are any change in programs. So increasing program, decreasing program, adding positions, removing positions, and they're listed there. I won't go through these. If there's any questions on that slide, I know you've already seen this. They total, after cost recovery, $79,137. The general fund, $44,344. Now looking at your general fund, you can see that the before adjustments, your general fund revenue, $9,005,919. Expenditures before transfers, $9,005,359. And we're showing $109,000 in transfers. And then the ASLs, $21,000. Capital outlay, $2,700 for matching bulletproof vest grant. Conference training and travel, $10,000. And CIP project, $72,000. And that does include the old City Hall roof. We'll talk more about that later. So you have a surplus of $2,384 at that point. And that compares last year, we actually had a deficit of 65. That was the planned use of fund balance for CIP. Kind of drilling down into the sales
Hey, Dave,
tax.
can I just interrupt you for one moment? On that alternative service levels slide, I'd like to point out a couple things for the public so that they can see The budget's a challenge. There's always, there's a lot of baby splitting in half kinds of things. But there's a couple items on here, this ArcGIS desktop software, Autodesk Civil 2018, engagement and work order tracking systems. These are all designed to make our staff more efficient. And actually, in some respects, for example, the civil engineering Autodesk, I think that's the one that is so that our staff can actually do things that we currently have to call sometimes consultants to do, thus making sure that some of these projects that are happening in town, for example, a lot of our paving projects and some of these things that we're funding through Measure L and other sources can actually be done in-house. And so it makes our staff more efficient, and it also brings some of that more work back in, which actually then does help with that cost recovery thing, because rather than paying outside folks, we're paying our inside folks, which I think is good for everybody, certainly for them and for the community. So I just wanted to point those things out. Thank you.
Great comments. Thank you.
I think along those lines, though, John, we have to point out that there were other people need computers too, and we couldn't replace it. We don't have the money.
No,
and so,
no, this is a small
it was
list
a
of
real
them.
hard decision to how we.
Exactly. No. Folks should understand that there was a list much longer than this one that we hacked away and hacked away and hacked away. But these were things that we saw specifically that could really help our staff excel.
Thank you. All right. So revenues, we talked about sales tax growth, 4.72%. All other taxes is your property, your TOT, your franchise fees, your transfer tax, business license, actually increasing by $106,000, primarily property tax and your franchise fees. Construction permits, slight drop based on a forecast. The Development Services Department was very conservative. However, if the hotel, Point View Drive Hotel, goes this fiscal year, that would be a positive surprise that we could build into your budget. But for now, we don't want to count on that, as well as some of the developments in town that have been dormant for a while. So intergovernmental revenues, that's your vehicle license fees, about $26,000 up there. Charges for services is anything from a police department fee to plan check to parks and rec fees. You can see that the total is slightly less by $15,000 based on trend. Fines and forfeitures is court fines for vehicle code fines. Use of money and property is lease, interest, and sundries. So $17,000 increase there. Other financing sources is overhead and CIP cost recovery. You can see the $30,000 increase there overall. Expenditures, drilling down to the department level, really don't have any comments other than the overall increase is 3.44%. When you compare inflation, that's pretty much, when you're between 2 and 3%, 3.5%, you're within that range. So very modest. By expenditure, you can see personnel, material supplies, the variances there. Again, we did assume negotiated increases for employees, a 7% increase in medical insurance and the minimum wage increase. So, and the other increases there. Looking at just from, a general fund dollar, where does the money go? 34 cents to the police department, 13 cents to development services, 34 to community services, 1 penny to the city council, and administration 7, worth every penny. Yeah, and non-departmental, which is your debt service, audit, transfers, contingency, 7 cents. So just another way of looking at it. This is another one. It's just a way of kind of proportionally seeing how your revenue compares to each department. For example, police department compared to sales tax, or community services just kind of gives you an idea. Looking at your revenues versus, this kind of looks like the Loch Ness Monster breaking through the water, but it's actually your revenues versus expenditures. And you can see that we had a good run between 11-12 and 15-16, and then in 16-17 we used planned fund balance for CIP, as well as we had some liability claims that we had to deal with. But we have a balanced budget in 18-19, and so that's not fair. Measure J. Measure J is growing. However, the sales tax is not keeping up with personnel costs, primarily PERS. We talked about PERS. And so the deficit year over year is growing from $85,000 to $238,000. I want to caution the council that currently you started out this fiscal year with about $400,000 in the bank with Measure J.
What is Measure J?
Measure J is an add-on sales tax, 1/4%, that's designed, it was passed in 1998 to enhance the benefit and salaries of sworn officers.
I just wanted
And
people to
program.
know what you're talking about.
Yeah, okay, sorry. So primarily, Measure J funds enhancements and benefits for sworn police officers. It also funds the K-9 program. But the lion's share of the budget is personnel, and unfortunately the cost of personnel is outpacing the growth of revenue. So the point is that by the end of this following fiscal year in 18-19, you'll end up with probably between $50,000 to $100,000 in that fund, and so at that rate, we're going to have to make some budget adjustments. So just giving you a heads up. Measure H, some good news. As you know, when you adopted the new water sewer rates, one of the things we did was we eliminated the discount, but that money then goes into the Sewer Enterprise Fund for capital projects and debt coverage. So there's over $1 million, almost $1.1 million. $582,000 is going to be transferred to the Sewer Enterprise Fund for debt coverage and CIP projects, and then another $516,000 to transfer to the Sewer Enterprise Fund for just debt service. And we'll talk more about the projects that Measure H is going to fund later on. Measure L is growing nicely. We anticipate receiving $2.1 million, and that'll all be set aside for street, sewer, and water line projects.
I want to highlight this because roads are such a huge concern for the city of Placerville. So because of Measure L, which you enacted for road, water, and sewer projects, we have an additional $2.1 million for street repair, sewer line, and water line projects. I mean, that is huge. And we wouldn't have $2 million this year to dedicate to our roads and the pipes underneath them without you. So thank you. And that same goes for Measure H and J. So that's huge. That's a big number.
That's huge. Thank you. All right. Sewer Enterprise Fund. So over to the left, you can see that we had a $432,000 operating deficit, and that was going on for several years. Unfortunately, we had your rate stabilization reserve to offset that one-time money. And thankfully, the ratepayers, we were able to pass the sewer rate increase, and also elimination of the discount, which shored up that fund. And we now have, with the transfer in from Measure H, $587,000 for projects. So good news there. Water Enterprise Fund, the same thing. It's now in a positive position, no longer in a deficit position, by about $28,000 before capital outlay. Other funds, I don't want to touch on all of these, but just a couple comments. One is the gas tax fund shows a deficit of $28,000. That's actually a planned use of fund balance for street striping. So that money's being used. It was planned to be used for that purpose. Parking fund is doing very well. Before capital improvements, it has a $93,000 surplus. $73,000 of that will go right into parking lots, and then the other $20,000 will go into a sinking fund for long-term capital replacement. And let's see here. The SRO grant, the police department is in negotiations with another school in the area that could potentially bring in another $15,000 for an SRO, school resource officer at that location. So that budget could actually increase. That will help the general fund and the Measure J fund. Okay. So your total budget is proposed $22,371,823 before capitalized expenditures. Actually, expenditures $19,661,311. It shows a surplus, but we plan on using those funds for primarily capital replacement. Just as a side note, over the past 12 months, the city has completed 16 CIP projects that range from the Clay Street Bridge EIR to the Town Hall HVAC replacement. So we've been very busy completing projects. And your Measure H, Measure L has also been busy, and they recommended that $438,869 in new sewer system only projects be funded, as well as $166,000 in for existing sewer system projects. So these are projects you've already appropriated money. They need more money, and we're enhancing those projects. Also to use the Measure H funds for sewer debt coverage. And then the Measure L funds, the last two bullets apply to Measure L. So to fund $1,043,000 in new street improvements, as the mayor mentioned, and then fund an additional $1.1 million for existing street, water system, and sewer system projects. Again, projects that are already on the books that we need to enhance and continue funding. And here's the first part of the CIP, and I'll hand it over to Pierre Rivas and Rebecca Neves to kind of go through their department's projects.
Tell us the good news. What's going to be fixed this year?
Good evening, Mayor, members of council. We have lots on the docket for this year. We have the Canal Street pavement rehabilitation from B Street to Moulton Street, which I should be receiving a bid for that any minute. So, moving on from there, we're working on Pacific Street from Clark Street to Cedar Ravine, badly needed repair. As well as Ray Lawyer Drive, the pavement rehabilitation from approximately Placerville Drive to Fair Lane, which, as you know, serves the county government center. And including Spring Street as well. We're doing a pavement repair there from Coloma Road, Highway 49 to Bedford Avenue. And we have one of our wharf CIP projects is our modular treatment unit. We're also moving forward on our Conrad Street sewer line replacement from Coloma Street to Cottage Street. And we have some various other CIPs related to old City Hall roof, as Dave mentioned, Town Hall roof repair, as well as the Town Hall carpet replacement, courtesy of the Community Services Development, or excuse me, Community Services Department, thanks to Steve Ewell. And thanks to Public Works Operations Manager Rick Ferreira, we have Lower Airport Road asphalt rehab, Big Cut Road asphalt rehab, Lower Main Street asphalt rehab, and Upper Airport Road asphalt rehab. And all of these projects are all funded through Measure L, as well as being handled by our very capable city staff. And as Dave mentioned, we also have some parking lot repairs related to the T-Trot lot, the Fox lot, and as well as the public parking rehabilitation and parking structure restriping. So those infamous compact stalls will soon be a thing of the past.
Amen.
And that's about it.
Wow. That, just before you go on, that is a very robust repair program for this next year. And we all just commend our city staff for, taking such diligent care of our community. I mean, this is phenomenal. So thank you so much. Our pleasure.
Thanks, Rebecca. And
thank you, Dave.
Steve and Rick, did you have any further comments on the other CIPs? Or?
No, I think that was a great summary.
Great.
What we got going on?
And
Dave,
lastly,
Dave.
Yes.
Hold on. I'd just like to also add about Measure L, especially, one of the tasks that I'm involved with is I'm on the board of directors of SACOG. Plus, all of us go out and interact with folks from other jurisdictions around Northern California and all over the state, for that matter. We are the object of much jealousy and Measure L, simply because the city stepped up and actually went out, and the residents of the city voted this in place. And now we're starting to deliver projects. And when I talk to other jurisdictions that don't have this kind of thing in place, they just marvel at it. And so, we have to deliver lots of projects, and that's what we're planning to do, and our capable staff will certainly be doing that over the next years to come. But this money cannot be understated. The value to this community of this money cannot be understated in terms of improving infrastructure, which improves the community, which makes Placerville just an even better place to visit and live in and start a business and work in and everything else. So anyway, understand we are the object of much jealousy for a bunch of reasons, but this is one of them. So
thank you.
I agree wholeheartedly. I don't know what we would do without Measure H and Measure L. So. The CIPs we're showing here are actually all new projects, and they total $1.6 million. In addition to that, we do have the $166,000 Measure H that will enhance other projects, as well as the $1.1 million in Measure L funds that we'll bring to you mid-year. So at your workshop on June 6th, there was a few comments. One was, again, we're going to come back to you this fall with a 5-year equipment replacement program and funding options, and we will strive towards replacing more police department computers. We're also going to secure an ongoing pavement contract with a local contractor, and also explore funding for the trail projects we spoke about that weren't on the list tonight, but we're going to look at things like the Transportation Development Act Article 3 funds. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have or take any comments.
That was a great summary, Dave. Thank you so much for that. And
You're welcome.
I want to reiterate to our public here that tonight's presentation is a result of a lot of diligent work by our staff and our department heads. We had 2 public workshops on this budget prior to tonight, and there were 2 meetings of the Measure HL committee to get to that list of road and sewer repair projects. So, and I don't know, countless hours by our staff to get us here tonight. So, thank you to everyone for that.
I would like to make a shout out to Sue Rodman, who actually sat through both of our budget workshops for the entirety. The only resident of Placerville who sat through both workshops. So
and she's here again this evening.
And she's here again. So just want to say, Sue.
Any other council comments or questions before we open it up to public comment? No?
Not this time.
Would any member of the public wish to speak on the budget that you've seen presented tonight?
That's Sue Rodman.
Come on down, Sue.
After that shout out, are you prepared to hear my comments? This is Sue Rodman.
Hold our feet to the fire, Sue. It's a good thing.
Yes, I intend to do that. I think, in all, I know that everybody has worked really hard on this. And the things I have to say are a couple of things. One is that I think somewhere in our budget we need to be able to come up with the $5,000 to put the gutters on the police department building to keep our officers from getting soaked in the rain. These are the men and women who put their lives on the line for us. And we need to show them some respect and at least not expect them to get drenched every time they have to go out of the building. The other thing I'd like to say is our annual debt service is almost $3 million every year. Now, the $1.5 million for the SRF loan for the sewer, if I have it right, will run for another 20 years or so. I think we're 10 years into it or so, and we've still got another 20 years to go on that. It's a 30-year loan. So there's not much we can do about that. But some of the other things that we go into debt for are the other half, that other $1.5 million per year that we are paying debt. As far as I'm concerned, debt service is really money we are throwing down a black hole. And in fact, if the only debt left after you take out the SRF loan for the water treatment plant were not existing, we could fund every single request in our CIP request list. That's a big chunk, except for fixing the renovation of the police building. But all the rest of it falls into about $1.5 million, which if we weren't paying $1.5 million out in debt, we could fund those projects. I would like us to be very careful, because you see everything I read that says if you want to have a good retirement, get out of debt. I think if we want to have a good city with a truly balanced budget, one of the things we need to put some emphasis on is at least not accumulating any more debt and seeing if we can clean up some of it that we already have. So those are my comments on our budget. I think that given the circumstances we're in right now, I think we've done a pretty good job. But I think that we could do better if we just get some of this debt cleared out.
Thank you so much, Sue. We appreciate all your digging into this with us. Anyone else like to speak on this?
Kirk Smith, Madam Mayor. It's really frightening to hear this kind of ticking time bomb with the costs of pensions creeping up, and that's significant. When you talk about the roads, one of the concerns I had is it just seems like there could be more distribution to the cost for those who actually use it. The suggestion's been made a number of times about seeking from the county a compensation for services that they get, such as the county fair. And when I've raised that in the past, the argument's been, well, yeah, they're going to tell us, so what? We in Placerville use those roads in the county too. But think about it. I don't know about you, but places like Kelsey, Georgetown, I've been there maybe 5 times in a year. I don't remember the last time I went to Omo Ranch or Grizzly Flats, but those people in those outlying areas come through here all the time. They come here for the county fair, they come here for work, they come here to the annual event for the Christmas parade, thousands and thousands of people. So it seems like it's at least worthy to advocate the interests of the city to get compensation for that. Likewise, of all the roads that were worked on, it looked like Placerville Drive was among the first to get some attention. And I'm not sure why, but a lot of the roads and potholes and bad repairs that were needed are cited in some photographs in the campaign literature, like on Bedford Avenue, and those don't seem like they've been touched. It seems like it's major arteries like Placerville Drive. So the second question is, isn't there some state money available for roadways like that where they could be paying for that because of the access to Highway 50? But those are the questions. The concern is to just be speaking out for an argument for the interests of people in this town, which is the county does get those services at a disproportionate level than is the other way around. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else? All right. To bring this back to the council and council comments. Yes.
Could I make
please.
one in relation to the debt service? And Dave helped me out with this, but I just want to mention the number that Ms. Rodman mentioned, the 1.5 million for the sewer loan. Is there's actually 2 pieces to that. It's actually 2.6 million, correct, Dave, for the sewer loan between the revenue bonds and the sewer. Am I stating that correct?
The total sewer enterprise fund debt annually is 2.7 million. Of that is 1.5 million in the 2006 SRF loan.
And what is the other portion?
We have 928,000 for the 2006 sewer bonds.
And how long do those go?
That'll go until, I believe, 2040.
Okay, my point is that 2.6 million of that is related to the sewer upgrade debt service, so there's not really 1.5 million that's going to go away quickly. Of that total 3 million, it's about 2.6 million that will be extended through the sewer service, right?
Right. And the 1997 SRF loan will be paid off next year, year after next.
Right.
Yeah.
And were the bonds that were sold in 2006? Some of them went to the capital improvements that, and I'm assuming the lion's share went to the capital improvements that actually made all the improvements that were done at the plant that were mandated. But also some of it, weren't they also done to create that sinking fund as well? Did that money also create that as well?
Yeah, it did 3 things. One, it refinanced your 04 bonds, so you got a preferable interest rate compared to the 04 bonds. It funded, so the $45 million improvements to the water reclamation facility was a combination of the SRF loan, the 06, and the bonds, as well as the bonds funded, for example, the Highway 50 sewer line relocation, and there was a smaller project that also funded. So it was all for capital replacement and refinancing.
Okay.
To answer your question.
And actually, I would like to address Mr. Smith's comments because I certainly agree with him that, he asked about compensation from El Dorado County for folks coming into our city, and he's so right. Our daytime population swells by 70% with folks coming in using our court system, being employed in the county offices, Marshall Hospital. We're a tremendous employer, and you are so right, Mr. Smith, that we have a tremendous impact on our roads for folks coming into our city using them. And that is exactly why we enacted Measure L. Right. So the folks that are using using our streets come into our city and pay sales tax and then help contribute to the cost of those roads. And that's exactly why we went after Measure L, so those folks have a chance to pay for the impact on our roads. So I just wanted to highlight that.
Right.
Any other council comments?
Well, yeah, I mean, the estimate, and I think it still holds, it's kind of it's a constant of the universe. 70% of a lot of the activities in the city are from county participants. For example, and I think the number still holds up, and Steve can correct me if I'm wrong, about 70% of the participants in the recreation program are from county residents that come in and use our recreation programs because the county doesn't generally offer those things. And about 70% of the sales tax that's paid inside the city limits of Placerville is paid by people that come in, not just county residents, everybody that comes into the city. So those numbers actually, I think, in fact, I think the sales tax actually speaks to Mr. Smith's concern that we get outside people to help pay our bills, because quite honestly, this budget would look a lot different if it had to be generated entirely on the backs of the citizens or residents of Placerville. There would be much smaller numbers here. The fact that all of this generation comes in, and it's because this is a dynamic community with lots going on, lots of jobs, lots of sales, lots of places to go. These large automobile dealerships, so, you know, the Home Depot, all of that, but also a lot of smaller shops people come in to shop in. That money is, in fact, the Measure L speaks to exactly what he was talking about. It's 70% of it is generated by people that don't live here, which means they come to town, yeah, they drive on the roads and they have some impact, and then they drop, for every dollar sales tax, 70 cents of that comes from them. So I feel pretty comfortable that we actually address that. As for dealing with the fairgrounds, anybody that can get that to work, you give me a call, because I have not been able to figure that one out, and I've lived in this town for 40 years almost.
With that, do I hear a motion or any other comments?
I have several comments.
Councilmember Wilkins.
Mark wants to.
Councilmember Wilkins.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay, just really quick.
You bet.
It just reminded me of what we were talking about earlier with Union Mine, how this is everybody's hometown. Union Mine technically isn't in Placerville, but this is their town. This is everybody's town. So that's I just thought about that.
Perfect. Vice Mayor Acuna?
My turn? Thank you. Just to tag on to what Councilmember Calerici just said, and we saw it a little bit ago, C&H Motors, for the first time, hit the top 20. And that's pretty significant. And I suspect it's because of all the people that are driving here from Omo Ranch and Kelsey and where have you, to buy specific types of parts that they now carry there at C&H. I know they cater to the big construction industry. And so we're blessed to have that operation centered in our tax base, so that those people making those trips to get their tractor parts are helping pay to fix that road that they're using. So exactly how we hoped it worked. And it kind of describes a working town, doesn't it? I have a couple questions, and one thing I would like to suggest for next year, because I'm getting a little concerned because we got an awful lot of projects promised out on the plate from last year and this year with Measure L. And Measure L is doing, again, exactly what we anticipated. It's strongly $2.1 million every year, and it is truly a blessing. I think it would be highly valuable, and it's extremely important to start showing the dollar amounts of the Measure L projects that have been completed. I don't need street names, because that just confuses people. We need, in 2017, $2.2 million of Measure L projects was completed. I mean, we're new on it. This is the second year that it's been in effect, so I think it's appropriate that now we start looking at coming up with a simple way to keep track of our success. And it could go across all of the measures, actually.
Right,
yeah.
Yeah, show people where their money's getting spent.
Yeah, one of the things, if I may, the Measure H, Measure L committee recommended, it was kind of a side recommendation, but to submit a brochure to the residents each year highlighting the projects that have been completed, including the dollar amount.
That would be
something
fine.
we're looking
Yeah,
at.
that's great.
It's an extra effort that we're not doing now,
Sure.
but I think it would be valuable to do.
The Transportation Commission produces like quarterly, I think, a brochure of all the county-wide projects. And there's a map and numbers and letters and stuff, and it's really very valuable, and it has like a little one-page description for each one. Something we could emulate, maybe in a smaller condensed version, but I think that's a great idea. The other thing about Placerville Drive, I'm going to guess, I'm not sure, except for maybe this stretch of Main Street between where everybody gets off, goes up Cedar Ravine and goes to Marshall Hospital and the school and everywhere else, I'm assuming has the highest traffic in town, besides Highway 50.
That's correct.
Okay. the way we're spending money at Measure L through the Measure L and H committee is for everyone here. It's a combination of things. Obviously, it's need. It is also how much traffic there is and need. So basically, that's it. And then the kind of work that could be done. One of the things about the Placerville Drive project was we could go in and get, for a relatively small amount of money, a big bang for the buck. We went in, we did a little bit of a grind down, we put a nice layer of asphalt. We're doing that in some other places. You're going to see that on like Canal Street, Spring Street. These are not long-term fixes, but they're going to last 6 or 7 years, which I think if you consider that these projects cost like less than $200,000 is real value added to the residents and the folks from outside the city that drive through our town. It's going to be a huge thing. So Placerville Drive is significant. And once again, getting back to our sales tax measure and 70%. Placerville Drive, if you take Placerville Drive and Forney Road, I'm going to make up some numbers, but I think I'm pretty close. It generates about 60% of our general fund. Okay, Dave's way too accurate for me. But the lion's share, the largest portion of it is if you took from, you know, Camino Power Tools and went around and ended up over at Diamond Pacific, that's the kind of thing. And it's a long road and they sell expensive things. It's not out of the ordinary. That road has a lot of traffic. It generates a lot of money. The fact of the matter is that lot of traffic is creating the money to help make those fix-its. And so I have no problem. I can show you potholes on my street that are pretty big. I don't expect them to get paved because the amount of traffic that runs up and down on Shun isn't that big a deal. And if they get to them, that's fine. It'll be cool. But, you know.
John, could I?
Yeah, go ahead.
Then we need to let Vice Mayor Cunha finish his comments, but yes, go ahead.
No, I just, going to Placerville Drive, one of the biggest problems we have with Placerville Drive is that it's an alternate route. And folks come off of 50 and head for north. And this has been a bugaboo for a long time. We've tried to use that as to sell, you know, trying to get more money from the state, et cetera, et cetera. And so far it hasn't worked. So, but anyway, but there's a lot of traffic that's generated as an alternate route. So,
okay. Anyway. All right, Vice Mayor Cunha, thank you for your patience on that.
Thank you. Gosh, geez, where was I? Again, the way I'm looking at it right now, we have a little over $4 million, probably $4.3 million between this year and this pending budget of projects that are promised. It's the 12th of June. It's a highly competitive construction environment, a very expensive construction environment, and I'm just worried that if we have an early fall, Dave, I don't expect you, this is not a question for you, but it's just an observation. I'm happy to have that problem, but it's a responsibility to the ratepayers or the taxpayers that we get over and we get the court over there with the apartments. Woodridge, very old street, very poorly built, desperately, this pavement's gone. We've been, you know, those are the examples that we need to make sure that we follow through or we provide accounting to where these money's at. Well, I want to go back and talk a little bit about the 2 budget workshops that Sue Rodman was the only public member that attended, and I appreciate her enthusiasm. There was several million dollars we were several million dollars into the deficit with this budget when we started. In the 12 years that I've been in the council, from good times through the recession back to good times, it was the most frustrating budget workshop that I think I've experienced because the economy does seem to be booming. California is a place to live. We were the 5th in the world now with our economy. That's a pretty amazing thing. But there was at least $2 million of projects that got wiped out to get us to here this evening. You and all the department heads and the city manager did exactly as they were tasked to do. They took a $4 million deficit and turned it into an almost balanced budget. But I'm afraid that there are many items in this city that I can no longer support, not recognizing the millions of dollars in deferred maintenance that exist in this town that we're on the verge of perhaps ignoring again. We have trucks in public works that have over 200,000 miles. Try driving 200,000 miles without leaving the city limits of Placerville and see how long that takes. We have a police chief that did not get any, you know, we have a potential to talk about this later on in the year, and I don't find that as an acceptable solution. We have the responsibility to maintain the historic buildings down on Main Street that Mr. Smith and his group are very concerned about. It's a $60,000 roof estimate, down from a $100,000 roof estimate, because Steve is working with a national roofing company now to work on all of our buildings. Those kind of hits cannot come out of the general budget, the operating budget that the department heads and the staff are trying to provide services to the residents of this city. For example, in this very building, the men's restroom is in such bad shape now that you can't actually keep it sanitary because it's so worn out. This building is an emergency shelter for a variety of different reasons. It's used for evacuations, it's a warming center, it's a cooling center. Right now, it's an embarrassment to me. That's just one example of the ongoing deferred maintenance. Now, there was some real enthusiasm during our budget workshops to look at creating a list to going into a one-time expenditures to use from our reserves. And I looked upon in my list of items with that idea that you don't want to buy a police car that only lasts 5 years. You want to spend your reserve money on the longest lifetime, biggest return you can get if you decide to go into your reserves. For example, the responsibility to maintain Old City Hall. That shouldn't come off the shoulders of the working members of this city or the citizens of this city. That, I think, needs to come out of reserve. The idea of waiting till August and then maybe looking at, none of the fleet issues got answered. Public Works didn't get any vehicles. Chief, I don't know how many patrol cars you wound up with. I know you requested 8 vehicles at one point.
I think the tentative approval has been for 2 marked patrol cars.
And there's a whole variety of other things that the way we've approached this, we're kind of just down and dirty balancing the budget, and we're leaving a whole lot of things hanging out there. The canine officer request to go with the school resource officer, that's a drug enforcement dog. I mean, we're in an epidemic of drug abuse, and we chopped that out of the budget. That to me just is again, is not a responsible thing to do. Got a corporation yard that's falling apart, probably doesn't meet the stormwater regulations with how we wash our vehicles up there. One fine would probably pay for what it costs to put the proper kind of a wash pit in up there. So I think we need to maybe, I would encourage the council to do what we need to balance this budget, but we need to come back very quickly and look at a way to come up with a priority of items that can be funded from reserves, one time only, to relieve some of the pressure from this operating budget and to address some of these deferred maintenance items that I could go on all night in parks, public works, streets, staffing, on and on. So for the moment, that would be my comment. How do we get there?
Any other comments? Do I hear a motion, Mark?
Well, I would move to approve, but I would move to approve with the idea that we come back as soon as possible to look at the idea of creating a list of appropriate projects that are responsibly funded from a one-time take from the reserve funds. Am I saying that correctly?
I believe so.
Can I comment on that real quick?
Sure.
Your general fund we have a good amount of reserves. From a best management practice, it's about 20%. But if in a really bad situation, that would last you a little over 3 months. Less than a quarter of the year.
It'll last us how much, Dave?
3 months.
Less than 3 months, about 3 months. What I would ask, if you want us to go back and try to fund other things, is to look at all options, not just reserves. Because with the PERS situation, I am concerned, and I mentioned this in the budget workshop, that we're going to have to make some very tough decisions just to keep the lights on, let alone funding one-time purchases. And this is just the beginning. I think it is going to affect program. That's what my gut says, being in this business for over 20 years. But I hope I'm wrong. But just give us as many tools as possible to try to accomplish what you'd like us to accomplish.
And I have a follow-up question to that. At the back of your budget work presentation, I know that at our last budget workshop, the council directed staff to look at a number of options, including some additional computers and trucks and additional comments, and that you will be preparing a 5-year comprehensive equipment replacement program. You're looking at the police department computers, pavement repair, and explore other outdoor funding for some of the other projects we looked at. So what is the timing on that again?
My goal was to, as soon as Dave got the books closed, so we know what our carryover is and exactly what our reserve is, at that point we can bring that back and have that. I'm estimating August, September-ish, but
Will be a soft close. Keep in mind that, for example, sales tax, we don't get the true up until 60 to 90 days later. So, and utility billing as well is we wait for that information. But we'll do a soft close in September, so we'll have preliminary numbers for carryover.
yeah. Just to add to that, though, there are projects such as the trail projects we recognize we want to get done before the next rainy season, because it's only going to get worse. So we do plan on bringing something back very quickly with some of those things to meet those needs. Agree with you 100%. The chief asked for 4 vehicles. We cut him down to 2, I believe is what is in it. 2, well, I'll call it 2.5. Is that right, chief, with an administrative one?
Yes, for 6.
No, he just asked for 4, right? Well, let me tell you, no, you're right. I'm talking just patrol vehicles. Oh, yeah. Just 4 patrol vehicles, 2 administrative vehicles.
Yeah,
right.
four vehicles and 2 administrative vehicles was my original request.
Right. So we did 2 patrol vehicles and 1 administrative vehicle is what we're still looking at.
And I would just like to say to to all the staff members, the department heads, and Mr. Warren, you've done exactly what you're tasked to do and we asked you to do, and that was to create a balanced budget. And I'm just saying that, and I think we need to move forward with that, use all the work, the time and energy that's been spent on that. But I think the council needs to consider to take the leadership role and say, because we are at a point where so much of our equipment and so many of our facilities are at the point of almost not functioning anymore, that we need to take a quick and a hard look at, do we create this separate action from the budget?
And time frame on that?
We will be back at least by September, if not earlier.
Okay. So your motion is on the table, Mark?
That would be my motion, but I would, when we meet once in July, and, I would think, why couldn't the department heads, if they know the equipment leasing that they need to contact, explore those options and see if there's anything that's viable out there to address the vehicles, for example. And then we could get some ballpark figures on what, I believe the roofing contractor is just days away from finishing his report on a number of roofs. So that timing's a little unfortunate, but again, we'll have it very, very soon. So I would say I would want to be giving staff some direction in August so that they could have these vehicles purchased or secured so that they could get delivery of them soon, this year. Some of these vehicles and same thing with the facilities.
And the computers and that. And I mean, it just
but
goes on and on.
We need to just look at that as a group. And
I agree.
And just
I'm willing to meet.
Mini workshop.
Okay, so that's your motion on the table. Did you need to clarify that, Regina? Would you like that clarified?
Let me try again. It would be to approve the budget as outlined by staff this evening, and then request that the council meet in the next 60 days.
Can I chime in just for a second? We're not asking you to adopt the budget tonight. We're just asking you to hold a public
receive
hearing
and hold,
at the next meeting,
okay.
which is
well, I can give that direction then if you want.
There you go.
Give staff direction that
receive and file.
Receive and file, and then we'll be wanting to have a council workshop to look at the deferred maintenance issues and the fleet issues.
Okay.
We can do that.
That summarizes it because there's deferred maintenance in every department.
Okay. So do we need additional action on this?
You were trying to bait me into making a
sorry,
motion.
Mark. I'm sorry. I should have.
No, we don't really.
Okay. It's just receive and file, isn't it?
All right. Well, thank you. Well, comments noted. Thank you so much. Appreciate it. All right. So with that, and thank you for your patience to this next item, the farmers market. Item 12.1, adopt a resolution approving agreement between the City of Placerville and the SOL Community Farmers Market. Mr. Ewell, it's farmers market season again.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. On behalf of SOL Community Farmers Market, Elizabeth Velasco has submitted a request to lease the city's T-Tralt parking lot to conduct a certified farmers market at a rate of $100 per month. The market is held on Sundays, June through September. The lease agreement before you tonight is similar to last year's agreement with one significant change. City staff is asking that the tenant keep the first 2 rows of center parking stalls open for the public parking. The 3rd row will be made available for vendor parking. The tenant will be responsible for all promotional parking and directional signage as stipulated within the draft agreement. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have at this time. And we may have been remiss in getting the location maps to you, and I have hard copies of those.
I believe we have a overhead slide of it too.
Dave, can you bring those up?
Yes, we do.
So we have 3 slides here for your information. The first one is the proposal that you can see here, which is from the applicant. If you can put that on, just run slideshow, Dave, up on the left.
That's helpful. Thank you.
So this is the proposal from the farmers market applicant, Luli, who is here with us tonight. And you can see Sacramento Street on the left. If you see the 2 kind of blue squares there in the middle, those are the post office boxes as you come into the post office area. And then you can see the parking lot. The normal circulation for that parking lot is to come in where you see the arrow pointing there, turn to your left and go out the other side. It's kind of a one-way route through there. So if you want to switch to the next one, Dave, the next one is what we are proposing. The dark or the red color is where we would propose that the booths would be. The blue would be for vendor parking or other uses, and then the green would be reserved for public parking. Still allows the flow of the traffic, as you can see by the arrows, to go through the parking lot. And then just quickly, if you want to go to the last one, Dave, it just shows an overview of the parking lot so you can see what we're talking about there. Again, you can see the flow of traffic the way it normally goes through there. Our proposal would be, it's kind of hard to draw from here, but the bottom part of the parking lot would be where the farmer's market would be, and then parking in the upper half. The applicant is requesting the opposite of that the farmer's market would be up towards the north end or the front end of the parking lot, which would allow for better visibility is what she is requesting. So.
Okay, great. Well, at this point, let's hear from Luli. Thank you so much for being here tonight. Good evening.
Good evening. Luli Velasco. I own the Soul Community Farmers Market, the Sunday Farmers Market in Placerville, in the T-Trawl lot. This is our 2nd year, and Steve's right, and Cleve, the contract remains basically the same, except that we are asking for the 2nd year to remain in the front, which we all discussed at last year's meeting. We tried the first month at the city staff's request to be in the back of the lot, and that we knew before we did it, but we did it anyway. That wasn't going to work. As soon as cars are parked in those spaces that they're requesting remain open, you can't see us in the back. You can't see anything in the back. One big truck or one regular truck completely blocks us. So you guys approved us to go back to the front of the lot since we were leasing the whole entire thing. We did last year and do this year the same, allow the whole lot to be open except for the footprint that the market itself occupies. So there's about 30 to 32 spaces open, aside from those where the vendors are parked behind their booths. Basically, it's our 2nd year. You know, the struggles we've had being moved from the Fox lot over the T-Trawl, not having the Main Street visibility, and not having visibility at all if we're in the back. So we're asking to remain in the front for this 2nd year. And we would continue to keep the lot open like we've been. Councilmember Acuna visited us on Sunday and saw how we set up and how that works. Appreciate you coming by. And so that's what we're asking. We appreciate being able to lease the city lot. We host, I don't know if anyone remembers or anyone here knows, we're the only certified farmers market in the county that hosts only local farmers and vendors. So unlike the Saturday market, which is gaining quite a bit of support for the move that's being proposed for them, they have farmers and vendors that come and compete. We heard the numbers that Ag brings in from our county that compete with our local farmers. So I have, this last week, 9. Each week we gain, we'll have 4 more by the 1st of July farmers. That's the most that any market in the county, and there's 13 markets in the county that any market hosts of local farms. So all that food's grown here in the county by local businessmen and farmers. All the goods and artisan items are also made and owned by business members or family members in the county. So we're asking for this second year to remain in the front, to continue to keep open those back spaces for the Main Street businesses, for tourists, for customers in the market. Post office visitors park in the back of the lot, even though the front's open. They like and are used to parking in the back as well. And that's what we're asking. We have good relationship and relations with the Carry House at this point. They've been really great about not having cars in that front spot. I put up paper signs until we get approval, and then I can put more formal signs up to make sure that area remains open. But like the Saturday market and the Wednesday night market, we're asking for support to continue growing this. We started with 14 vendors this year, which is the most that we or Wednesday has started with in the past. It's going really well. We've only had 2 weeks. Anyhow, we would like to continue in that way.
So much. And at this point, does the council have any questions? Or no? All right. Thank you so much. And at this point, I'll open it up to the public for any comments on this item.
I'd like to, David Hardy, and I'd like to voice my support for the market. In 1985, I started the farmers market at the fairgrounds, managed it as a volunteer for 7 years. And it was on the fairgrounds location, and we struggled to promote that market. We wanted to open a second market. We didn't have enough farmers to do so. Now, hearing their proposal in terms of location, my question to the council is this. Was the other parking lot more on Main Street between the brewery and the bank ever considered as a location for these people? I only say that because location is extremely important, visibility is important, and the parking lots, to me, are all equal. Some are more visible for their use than others. It would seem to me if they were on next to the brewery, that parking lot could be more utilized, better utilized for the few hours that they are in fact there, and that the people who are visiting the market could park where they exist now. That's my question to the council.
Great. We'll get that answered after public comment. Thank you.
Kirk Smith. I think the farmers market deserves your support because it's something that culturally goes back to certainly the first 100 years of this town. Food was something that was organic, it was local, and it was fresh. It had to be because of no refrigeration. You had ice at the ice house that was brought by Pearson Soda Works initially, and people had it brought to their houses. The Historic Museum has photographs of old carts, people with horse buckboards delivering meat by wagons. So it's not much of an extension to have food sold out of the back of a buckboard and sold out of the back of a truck. So now what you have is what's really a throwback to what it was in the area. It's something that needs to be encouraged because it adds to quality of life. Steve Yule does a fantastic job in the programs that he puts together. That catalog is sensational. I hope to take some of those classes. Likewise, I went by the swimming pool tonight. Big crowds. People use it. I'm not sure either of those ventures make you money, but it adds the quality of life. Likewise, when someone made a remark about you don't get enough money from the farmer's market up the street, I went and asked merchants all up and down, as far down as the old post office, and folks consistently said they get more business, more sales on Saturday than any other day, and the exception was the yarnage yarn store, which has a boutique kind of practice customer base, and they said it adds to the quality of life. So it's very popular and it's very important. But I'm just puzzled at where you get these prices from, where you charge. It's not by competition. This particular enterprise deserves, if anything, a discount compared to what you gave the folks up at the Ivy House, because the rates aren't the same. They have substantially more more folks that are farmers, more vendors, so it equals about $14, $15 each week, and that's a big amount of money goes in the pocket. You also, but there was no competition. You didn't throw it out to see what else could be had, and certainly there were people ready to pay you more money. So these folks, if anything, should get a discount, a lower rate, because it's substantially not as profitable as the other one because of the dramatically less amount of vendors they have. And I don't think they ever got a fair shot at the Fox Brothers Pharmacy, excuse me, the parking lot. I keep getting confused with, yeah, Fox when we grew up to the pharmacy. But the location there just never got a fair chance because they weren't allowed to let parking come in there. They had plenty of room to have parking in addition to the market itself. So that would have helped to accommodate the brewery as well as the people coming in there, and it would give you more visible room. So I just think if anything, they need a lower rate in the name of getting something in parity with up the street at the Ivy House.
All right, thank you for your comments. Anyone else? All right, bring it back to the council for comments.
Okay. I don't see any reason to put them in the back of the parking lot.
Can we put up the slide
can you put up
that they're
first slide,
proposing,
Dave?
their
Put up
preference?
Thank you.
Very much.
I don't see any reason for that. I mean, people, I've been down in that part of the world on a Sunday morning, and it's not like there's people that park in there, there's no doubt, but I don't see why we couldn't at least continue on what's been going on for some time. So I would be more than happy to support this.
I'm wondering if we can't get an explanation from Steve or somebody who has proposed this. I want to know why it was.
Let's hear from staff. Why was this part of your recommendation this year, Steve?
Typically, it was just based on safety and being able to get some kind of circulation pattern through the parking lot. In addition to that, it was the number of stalls that weren't being occupied due to not enough vendors that were not being used by the public for all of the other businesses on Main Street.
On Sunday morning?
Yes.
Well, I understand.
You need to go down there.
I go down there.
It's busy.
I go down there.
At 9 o'clock?
And haven't there been complaints from
yeah, I got one.
businesses that are around that with their...
Well, they had a lease stall they couldn't get to.
Okay.
And they hadn't gotten Cleve's message that they're supposed to use which lot? The Fox lot?
The Fox lot, correct.
Because we are 7 days a week parking now.
I believe that's been taken care of, though?
That has been taken care of.
So, Councilmember Borelli?
No, I wanted to hear an explanation, and I think Steve's pretty fair about everything, and his recommendation to me packs some merit, and I just want to know.
Vice Mayor Cunha?
The thing that I observed, thank you, Madam Mayor, was just exactly kind of what Steve said. The circulation kind of gets muddled up in there, and the back half of the lot, there were some kids playing soccer down there this last Sunday, which half a parking lot empty doesn't sound like much of a moneymaker. When you could have, I was watching people look for parking, and they come up and they either park in somebody else's lot and walk across, which is great, or they come up and then they go through the post office lot and take their choices. Either go around again, or they go up to the church, or they go across the street to B of A. I mean, it seeks its level, if you will.
Right.
I was very happy to see that there was a tremendous number of farmers in attendance this past weekend. It looked like it was doing just exactly what it should have been doing. People were coming in from all the various parts of Main Street.
Yeah.
The operator had her signage out, which was perfect.
I saw one.
Seemed very appropriate.
Saw one.
I have just been aware, as we get into summer, the hotel is very busy, and they're usually booked. And that parking where the vendors are right now. Go to Steve's slide, please.
Which isn't nearly as nice.
Let's see here. The green block, okay? That is like premium overflow parking for the hotel / coffee shops, etc. And the folks park there on Saturday night, you have to remember, or they get told by the hotel that they can't park there, they're going to have to move. So we're getting $25 a day for the rental of the lot,
right,
versus how much money do you think the hotel generates in a weekend in TOT tax? I mean, I think the two can coexist, and I think Steve had a legitimate concern. So
I agree. I agree that there's a legitimate concern. I just don't share the magnitude of it. That's all.
And I do agree in looking at the two diagrams that with proper messaging to the hotel and making it, Dave, can I have the other diagram? Thank you so much. Making it clear what parking is open to the public, which is 2/3 of the lot, that I think both can exist without conflict. You can get in and out, provided that whole space for public parking remains public parking. I mean, we can't have kids playing in it. It would need to be, totally open to the public and to parking for safety concerns. But seeing that diagram, it sounds like with the growth of the farmers market, a good portion of those farmers market stalls will be filled with some additional room for growth. But I think for this next year, I think both can exist together with proper messaging to the hotel in seeing this diagram.
And we do close off access to or actually we close off egress from the parking structure every Wednesday. And that forces everybody to go out and make a right-hand turn onto Highway 50. So it's not like we don't cause some parking nausea with our accommodation of farmers markets, and I don't imagine that farmers market generates tons of money, and I don't think that's what this is about. This is about.
I'm just trying to be respectful of the other existing businesses.
I agree with that. And you know what? This is becoming
an
interesting.
And I see it. I saw half of a parking lot not being utilized because people either were afraid to go in, for they didn't want to hit somebody, or they didn't know it was open. And the folks that I saw walking up could have utilized that same block of parking. That could have been the farmers market parking.
Well, they should just.
From what I saw. So I mean, I wish you would have seen it.
Well, and it's understandable that when you see all that in the front, that people are not going to want to cross that line. They're not, and so maybe there needs to be some more signs put up, inviting the people to go.
Yeah, I'm going to try and drive into the back this next Sunday just to see if I can do it.
Well, right there as the entrance to the parking lot, parking sign there.
If I'm not working Sunday morning, I will.
Well, and I think the applicant is doing a great job bringing an organic farmer's market, and I appreciate that. I'm sure she thinks I'm picking on her, but we have to work as a community, and there are there's a lot of businesses that count on Sunday mornings as a big part. The hotel is I think it's great that we have a problem that it's booked solid every weekend, and it's a destination for an awful lot of visitors. So, I'm just trying to be respectful for who's trying to compete for the existing facilities. So.
I'd like to, actually, with those concerns, I'd like to go ahead and make a motion that we adopt a resolution approving the agreement between the Seoul Community Farmers Market and the City of Placerville, with the correction that we amend the contract to allow for the use of the 2 front rows of the parking stalls for vendor booths, with the rest of the lot open for public parking, and we try it for a year.
Like that.
Right, like that.
I'll second that.
Any more comments? All right. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
No?
No.
Okay. Motion carries. And thank you very much, and we wish you a good farmer season. All right. Item 12.2. Appoint an ad hoc subcommittee to work with staff and consultants on developing cannabis business regulations and provide further direction to staff and the committee. Mr. Morris.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. As you recall, you've had two public workshops on this topic, and we've gone over quite a bit of detail. I tried to list some of that, kind of a review of what we've done in these two workshops. My recommendation tonight and request tonight to the council is to appoint a council subcommittee to work with staff and our consultant, HDL, that we have contracted with, to develop both a cannabis tax measure and the business regulation ordinances necessary to bring back to council to consider whether or not they want to move forward with this. So the recommendation you have tonight is to appoint the committee as we've requested. Other options would be to appoint a committee with different makeup. We're only recommending 2 council members to work with staff and the consultant, but you could look at others. You could, the other option you have now is if you do not want to move forward with something related to cannabis, you could give staff different direction to work towards a different avenue. But the only purpose of this tonight is to ask you to appoint the committee if you want to move forward and consider regulation and allowing cannabis further. So with that, I'll answer any questions.
And the committee's task will be looking at both recreational and medical and bringing back a recommendation to council on
that's
either
correct.
Or both?
That's correct.
Okay. Right. Any other questions for staff at this point? I assume there's people in the community that want to speak on this. You've sat through the rest of this meeting, so the public comment is now open on this item. Good evening.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, council members, and staff. My name is Kelly Shazana. I represent Pure Life Collective in Diamond Springs. I would obviously like to see this move forward and, if at all possible, be a help in any way that I can. I consider myself an expert in the field in that we are a state licensed medical facility, and offer myself to any consultation or to be part of the subcommittee if that is a possibility.
All right.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much. Thanks for being here tonight. Anyone else? Good evening.
Good evening, council members. Rod Miller, El Dorado County Growers Alliance. Just to want to support you all in moving forward and offer our help. We're also fluent in the voluminous state regulations and be happy to get whatever questions you have answered. And also want to correct the record. I think I said at the workshop that on-site consumption is not legal under state law, but that was a mistake. It is legal if you approve it, not to muddy the waters, but that is always an option. So thank you very much for the consideration.
Thank you for being here. Anyone else? Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, City Council, Mayor, for having us here and moving forward with this after so many years. I'm Matt Vaughn with Medical Marijuana Caregivers Association of El Dorado County. We have been a collective operating under state regulations for 14 and a half years now. We're still working on local authorization with the county, but also we would like to move forward and see what we can do here with the city, and we'd offer our input on this because we have been doing it for a long time, and we do the whole seed to sale type of work with the cannabis and medical. So anyway, just to offer, and thank you for considering all this. All right.
Thank you so much. Good evening again.
Good evening. Yes, I'm Sarah Kaufman. As many of you remember, last time I spoke, so you know my view already on this subject. I would just like to recommend Max Del Real. I know he sent you a letter volunteering for the ad hoc committee, and I have known him for over 10 years. I was a teacher, so he was in the teacher as well, and he's got a lot of experience in this area, setting strategic policies for cities. So I just wanted to give you my recommendation for him.
All right. Thank you so much. We did get his letter, so thank you. Anyone else? Hello again.
Hi, how are you? I've submitted to the council for the review and the staff several pieces of information, one of which was a letter from John Driscoll in regard to him thanking the advisory, the Medical Marijuana Citizens Advisory Committee, which reviewed the regulations in 2006. My comments are this. I'm curious on why all of this is being redefined after we went through all that considerable work and energy to evolve what was on the books and what defined the medical dispensary for the few years that in fact it was open. The other comment I was going to make, if this proceeds, the ad hoc committee, I would strongly recommend the council to add in a few more members who have graciously volunteered to in fact amplify the expertise that you need to consider to make the right decisions.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anyone else? All right, I'll bring this, thank you so much. I'll bring this back to the council for further comments and action. Who would like to start?
I'd like to ask, are you going to?
No, go ahead.
No, we'll go down the line.
Okay.
Please go ahead.
So are we deciding whether or not to include members of the community with us or just us? And if that would be decided, if we say yes, would that be decided between the two committee members who to add, or how does that, how is that?
I think the action before us tonight is to determine what kind of subcommittee we want.
Yeah.
But not to choose members?
No.
Well, two of us.
Well, yeah, but.
Yeah, I would recommend that you choose the council members. Our recommendation is it would just be a council committee. Now, I will say that that committee would be open to inviting outside expertise from those who have requested it to come in, and I expect that we would use those expertise, but not be an official committee member.
But it would be up to the committee members to decide whether we include.
Whether or not they invite those outside expertise to come in. One of the things I want to caution you on is we do have somewhat of a tight time frame on this. Right. If you want to appoint outside and have a process to find out who those are, that takes some time. We'd have to probably advertise and figure out how we select those. That's my only concern with that. And so my recommendation would be you consider using those expertise of those people that have offered, but allow the two subcommittee members that you appoint to decide who they bring in and bring them in not as an official member, but only to provide expertise as needed.
So would the meetings be public? I know they don't have to be noticed because there's only two of us, but would we invite?
Probably not, but that would be up to the council.
The way I read it is that they would, that two members from the council then would do their due diligence, do their homework, and interview all these, both sides of the spectrum, and and then present what was learned.
And work with staff to develop a model that brings to council and the public.
Right.
Does that answer your questions?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, great. John?
I think it's a great idea.
Okay.
I have a question, Cleve. How is this? What I am garnering from all this is that when we present this as a ballot measure, it's to allow cannabis sales, right? Tell me exactly
the
how.
The ballot measure will only tell you how much you will be taxing the sales when they happen. The ordinance to allow it will be a separate item that does not go to the
That doesn't go to the public?
It'll only be done by the city council.
Okay, all right, okay, because I was a little disappointed in the Mountain Democrat when they came out with their headline when they interviewed us, and they talked about, it says selling fun marijuana in Placerville discussed again. I don't think any of us ever mentioned that we were selling fun, or I think this is a real serious issue, and I didn't really appreciate this headline. They did, I was pleased with our quotes and everything, they were right, but I think this is misleading to the public, and it presents, you know, a bad taste. I just, you know, as the way it's perceived. And so I just wanted to get that straight about this, what's the ballot measure. So
it appeared a little flippant in that.
It did,
yes.
It was like they were trying to make something cutesy out of an item that I happen to think is serious.
Yeah.
So
thank you for that. Vice Mayor Acuna?
Well, I think it's a good idea. I think we need to move on this
Okay.
pretty quickly, and I would be happy to serve on it if the council would so choose to,
And
to appoint me.
I will move that we appoint Vice Mayor Acuna and Councilmember Clarici to the ad hoc committee, and let them work with staff to develop the regulations and model.
I'll second that.
Okay. And before we make a vote, I do have to say that I made some comments in our last workshops, and I want the, especially our ad hoc committee, to know that I have a meeting with the district attorney tomorrow.
Thank you.
To get his stance on that. I want to make sure that that we understand what his stance is from a law enforcement standpoint. I think that's critical information in developing our regulation and our models. And so I will pass that information on to the ad hoc committee through our city manager. So.
And I'd also like to, and I think I talked to our city manager already about this, getting the, and maybe you'll find this out in your conversation with him, but where the county stands on this issue. Because I've heard 2 or 3 things, and I'd like to know what they're approving, what they're not approving, and et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, that'll be good information. All right.
Yeah.
So all those in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Well, thank you, gentlemen, and we look forward to your recommendations.
I had a question for the city attorney.
Sure.
Mr. Driscoll. As we go ahead and meet, there are obviously, as has been at every one of these workshops, a number of folks that have come forward as local and regional experts on this issue. As this committee meets, I think we've had a concern that we want to make sure we hear from the entire community. As the 2 of us do our work, working with staff, and I intend to engage Mr. Rivas intensely on this, we want planning input. Do we run a risk of an appearance of not, of allowing a fair input from the community? We obviously have about 10 people that would sign up here this evening. What cautions do we need to take as we take testimony?
Well, there'll be plenty of opportunity for the public to hear what comes out of the committee.
Okay.
The proposed ordinances will be vetted, I'm sure, at more than one council meeting. You have a number of significant decisions to make. Councilmember Borelli brought up a question, will this ballot measure approve the sale? And it was answered, no, that won't. But you do have to think about, are you going to make, let's assume the council, for example, decides that it wants to go ahead with adult use and medical use. Is that going to be conditioned upon the sales tax measure passing? Or will that, if the sales tax measure doesn't pass? So those are decisions you're going to have to be making down the road.
Okay.
We're going to be working with a consultant who is very experienced in this area. Staff will be drawing not only from the consultant's expertise, but examining a number of other jurisdictions. I forget the exact number, but there's at least 40 municipalities in the state which have legalized sale of marijuana in one form or another. And those ordinances are there for us to look at. I've been looking at probably half a dozen of them over the last couple of weeks just to see what's good, what's bad. Looked at some drafts that the consultant has provided to us to see if there's things that I thought were missing from those drafts that we would want to pick from and glean from other ordinances, stuff like that. Now, having said all that, the committee that we had back in 2006 was very helpful, and the input we got was very helpful. It wasn't so much necessarily from a legal standpoint as it was from a practical standpoint. We had very little to go on. We were new ground basically at that time, and a lot of things have happened since then. When we came back to the council after the council had refused to renew the permits or licenses for the existing medical facility, we came back with options which were to, what the council ultimately did, ban all marijuana sales, or revise the ordinance or keep the same ordinance. My recommendation, if they didn't want to ban them, was to make significant revisions to what we had in terms of that ordinance, because so much had changed between 2006 and 2010. So, and that's nothing compared to what's happened in the last 8 years. So I think it's important that the committee get some input where it determines it's needed from people that have the experience in the area. But right now, there's a lot more information on the books than there was back in '06. So I don't know if that answered your question.
It does, I think, and I appreciate it, John. It gives it clear, some clarity to what we can ask, and it sounds like it's an appropriate use of the expertise.
Thank you for that clarification. Appreciate it. And obviously, I would encourage the committee, and I know you will, because you will do your due diligence to look at both sides of the issue from a educational standpoint, and appreciate your work on this. So, all right. With that, we're on item 12.3, approve a letter of support for state homelessness funding. Mr. Morris.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This came before us from the League of California Cities late last week. Wanted to present this to you. It's simply there is some funding, some one-time funding that the state is putting forth to help with the homelessness issue. I wanted to mention that I did read, in following up with the League of California Cities, apparently there has been an agreement reached between the governor and the legislature to fund approximately $500 million of in one-time funding for homelessness. So I think it is important. We can still send this letter on, but it sounds like that's close to being a done deal in terms of what they want to fund in this coming year. So with that, I'll answer any questions I have.
Actually, that segues into my one addition to this, and Regina, I can get with you after this, but I would like to add on the second paragraph after the first sentence, I'd like to state in El Dorado County, homelessness has risen 122%, because I'd like to impress upon, if they'll read this letter, impress upon them the great need that rural communities have, and with the hopes that their funding trickles down to our communities to help us deal with the impacts of this.
I think that's a good idea.
Yeah. So I can give you the exact wording, but I'd like to add that to this letter. Yes, Councilmember Wilkins.
On the turn the page over?
Yes.
It says, it is clear that the homeless is a statewide problem that eludes a one-size-all solution. This is why cities and are at the forefront. What is the and? What is, it seemed like something was missing.
Counties?
Ah.
It's like a typo?
Good catch. This is why cities.
I missed that. I'm
Good
sorry.
Catch.
Good catch.
So counties, or just
I
take.
figured it would have been
Let's just take
counties.
out the and.
Or just take out the and.
Yeah, let's just take out the and because we're talking
Take out
about
the and.
cities.
Yeah.
Good catch, Tricia.
I'm
Yeah.
looking.
Right here. So, all right. Any other comments on this? All right. Does the public have any questions or comments? No? All right. Bring it back to the council for action.
Hello.
Public's gone home.
I'll move the letter of support with
Second.
with the additions noted.
Okay. All those in favor? Aye. All right. Thank you. Thank you for getting this on the agenda. Appreciate it. All right. El Dorado County Transit. Patty or Mark? Anything to report?
Yes.
We bought a bunch of buses.
I just wanted to call attention to the county, again, through transit, they're offering a free county fare shuttle. The shuttles take place at the Library Government Center, the Placerville Drive Gate, and Walmart Missouri Flat Transfer Center. And they're going to offer it Thursday and Friday, 11:30 a.m. to 12:30 a.m.
Wow.
Saturday, 9:30 to 12:30 a.m. Sunday, 11:30 to 10:30. And I would just I want to encourage people to use this because it's a great way to eliminate trying to find around and around trying to find a parking place. This is a great service that transit offers.
Great. Thank you so much for highlighting that. Appreciate it. Transportation Commission, who'd like to take that? You're on a roll, Patty.
Well, we had again a great meeting, and Woody, some of the things that he talked about, and was the the active transportation plan and the grants, and then he talked about unfortunately, the Highway 50 Camino Safety Project didn't get the funding. Talked about our Western Placerville Interchange Phase 2, our Upper Broadway Bike Lanes project. We've got a lot of money that goes through our transportation, and I'm not too sure people really realize how much these folks do. And then the short and long range transit plan update. They talked about the Star Route, the 49 South Fork, the American River Bridge project. If you haven't been out there, that's quite fascinating to see that great big project. Yeah, they're getting there. And then I think one of the real important things, at least in my mind, is the U.S. Highway 50 hotspot study. Yes. And hopefully we're going to do something to help with this congestion that we have out here on Highway 50. So I think those were the main things.
Thank you so much, Patty. LAFCO.
Everything is wonderful at LAFCO.
Everything's wonderful. Great.
Moving right along.
Great. SACOG?
We had a GRAPA, Government Relations, Public, I don't know if that's an acronym. Anyway, and we had a meeting on Monday. It was pretty good. They want to do they're going to start a scholarship program to get kids, so many kids from each jurisdiction, high school kids, a junior and a senior, to get them involved in government work. Nice. Usually, and Jay Chenier is really rounding up money, and they've rounded up a remarkable amount of money. So that's something that's going to be coming along, and as it does, we'll make our local schools apprised of it, and who can. And one of the interesting things is the thing that I really pushed for, because they asked me about it initially, and the first blush I said, because it was like, well, these kids could, this would be good for them in high school. And I said, if you just take some kids, and this is no offense to Granite Bay, I just used it as an example. Kids from Granite Bay don't need any resume builders. They're out doing plenty of stuff. I said, if this is going to mean anything to anybody, it would be nice to go into schools and into communities where maybe those kids don't get exposed to this kind of work. It's something that would be almost like, I want to go to the moon, to work for a government agency, to do work like what Dave and all the folks here do in the government side of things. And so that's actually was put in as an emphasis of this program, is to go into places where maybe the kids don't get stuff. So I was really pleased with that. So as it's still, we voted on it, it's going to go to the board. It'll probably be approved at the board level. And then once it's kind of all firmed up, we might even have SACOG come up and just do a little presentation. I was very impressed. The other thing we're working on is housing. There's not enough of it. It's too expensive. The blueprint is going to be brought back. This is all because they're going to be doing the MTP and all of that, starting that process here, which is all our folks will be involved in it up here. But the idea that there's not enough housing, and what has happened since the blueprint was passed, because it was passed like 12 years ago now, and infill and greenfield and what's going on, and our house is just too expensive to build from the get-go because of fees and other stuff that's just structural. So it's kind of an interesting process, and I'll keep you more apprised of it as it goes along. But that's going to become a major, I think that's going to be a major push for the Civic Lab things that they do. I think this year they're going to look at a number of those issues through Civic Lab, which will be kind of interesting. So anyway, those are two things that kind of came up in the meeting that I went to.
Great, thank you. No 2x2. Requests for future agenda items, anyone? No? City manager? What you do?
Well, I don't think it's an agenda item, but I want to bring it up because it's a huge safety issue. The trees that are growing out of Hangtown Creek into Highway 50, and I talked to Supervisor Veerkamp, and he got a environmentally sensitive area, couldn't touch the trees. You can't see at Center Street and Bedford Street, it's all hidden, and it's all willow trees, I believe, which are, and someone's going to get a serious accident.
I had a complaint from a constituent on Friday about that and brought that to our staff, and absolutely, that's a dangerous spot.
You know what, I'm willing to go out there.
With sensitive pruning equipment?
9, 10 o'clock at night, got my headlamp and chainsaw.
Under the cover of darkness.
We just go in, and all of a sudden there's a bunch of trees missing.
Oh, mother, making noise grinding the
Staff
highway.
didn't hear a thing.
They'll never hear the chainsaw.
Real busy Friday.
No, we need to get a hold of. We either need to do the work. We can get Caltrans's help. We've done that once a couple of years ago, they closed the lane and we got out there with a contractor and cleaned it up.
I guarantee
I
you,
can't.
if you cut those trees down, they're going to grow back like that. I mean, they're weeds in the creek, and they have water. So
I don't
what's
make,
more
I don't
important?
make the rules,
I
John.
know, they
I'm
can't
just-
be that
Well,
sensitive.
we can't poison
It's a
them.
very hardy environment.
We can't.
Staff
poison
is
them.
laughing.
That would be the next thing.
It's,
We did clean some of that up just yesterday.
Oh, okay.
Did you?
So we'll
Yeah.
go take a look. Is
Okay,
it better?
So if you guys rock, you
It's
did-
better. It's not perfect, but
As long as you can make that right-hand turn
Thank
from
you,
Center
Rick.
Street safely,
Yeah.
that's the overarching concern. Great, well, thank you,
Oh, at Bedford.
I'm
Thank
more
you for the
worried about
cleanup,
Bedford.
staff. Appreciate you
I
cleaning
want
up our
Bedford
city.
to be the focus of this cleanup work.
That's awesome, great. We do have amazing staff.
Think of which street I'm thinking of next.
Any other staff reports?
I just want to mention quickly, I want to thank Rebecca Neves. We've been doing a lot of work on Western Placerville interchange. I want to make 2 points.
Yes.
I've briefed you on this a little bit about the problems with our eastbound on-ramp and the funding for that we thought we had secured. We have not given up on that. We are working hard on some alternatives to hopefully be able to still keep that money. We're waiting for communication from the CTC right now on exactly why there is an issue, and basically owning up that they made the error and this is why the issue is there.
We think we
so-
should storm them. We should
Yeah.
all go down there.
Yeah.
So we have that one issue. I will keep you informed on that. Woody is working with me on that and Rebecca on that. We're making some inroads. We hope to some possible solutions. We'll let you know
Great.
how that comes out.
Yeah,
The-
I would not be adverse to approaching the board of directors. I mean, it's ridiculous. This city went out on a limb and supported SB1. You know, I mean, there's not too many red parts of this state that supported that damn thing, and we went out and did it. And now they're doing this. This is ridiculous.
This is just
like one
uncalled for.
bureaucrat going crazy.
Yeah.
And we should just like not let this sit. I was very disappointed with the action of the Transportation Commission, because it's kind of like, well, you know, we can't make them angry because they're going to like someday in the future. I'm really upset about the Camino interchange project. That's a safety project, and
Right.
it looks like now it ain't going to get built. And all that's really going to happen is they're going to run a K-rail. Now, it's not even in the city, so I guess we can't get too excited about it, but they're
Well-
going to run a K-rail up through the middle of that road, and then there's just going to be nothing but
It's in our
POs.
backyard, and we've seen nothing but accidents and people
well,
killed.
oh, no, the
and it's just-
K-rail will
it's
eliminate
awful.
the accidents because you won't be able to cross it anymore, but that will just mess that part of the world
So,
up.
yeah, and they worked on this so many years.
Well, that's part of the problem. It took forever to get it
So anyway,
done.
we will keep you informed. We're waiting, again, as I mentioned, some information from the CTC. We requested a letter to explain why they are taking the action that they are. As soon as we have that, we'll look at what our option. In the meantime, we are working on some other options where we think if we can get some cooperation with Caltrans, it can still work. So Rebecca's working hard on that, so we appreciate it.
Great.
The second thing I wanted to bring you attention, I think somewhat good news, is we had relayed to you the issue with potential cash flow problems with Western Placerville Interchange. SACOG has now agreed to basically loan us $1 million for that project. It has to go to their board next week. It will be at their board meeting. But it's my understanding it'll be a consent calendar item and it will be approved. So early July, we should have that money. We will put in reserves if needed. And then the agreement is that we will pay it back by August 1st of 2019. So
And
just
Dave
wanna
will
let you know
sleep
that.
easier tonight knowing that that's the money in the bank. So thank you, SACOG. That's great. So everyone, we've been late. Thank you so much for staying. We'll see you June 26th, and thank you again for all your work.